Anyway, by the way, that was not in support of R. Kelly. I just saw a really funny R. Kelly getting assaulted in jail joke, which we can only hope is exactly what's happening. Anyway, moving on. Ooh, should probably change the ticker up, I'd imagine. NFL. Oh, my bad. Week 4. Where have I been? Where did I get it from last time? Was it from here? What's up, y'all? What's up, everybody? Hi, YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Did I say it in that weird voice that freaks people out? I think I did. Anyway. Here we go. Oh, man. You suck for this one, bro. You suck for putting pictures in between it. If you guys want to hear like a behind the scene type deal, so the way I get the ticker is let me move the microphone in a more audio friendly place. The way I get the ticker with like the score and stuff on it, I go to like an article that has all the games listed and their times and stuff before the final scores go up, and I just copy and paste from there because they're like written in text. Shout out to CBS for constantly having it written out like in just regular text, but this new CBS article has it written out in regular text, but it also has photos in it, so I have to like copy and paste them separately. Anyway, you know, you're gonna have to wait a little bit before we get it popping here. I should probably also open up Twitch before things get really weird. Let's see. Get these advanced stats out of my face. Shout out Football Reference, by the way. Footballreference.com. If you ever want to be if you ever want to try and educate yourself on how football is played at a high level, they have advanced stats that show you different things that teams are doing. So, shout out Footballreference.com. I try and do better. Man, I can't believe somebody like really showed up in my stream and like was fucking. Oh man. Somebody showed up on my stream and had like 7 accounts and it like spam followed. So it's just really weird that that's what happened. Anyway, let's see. Oh man, what's up? What's up, Kevin? I will say I'm a big supporter of listening to my podcast, mainly because you can watch Harry Potter anytime. And honestly, You're over the age of 21, so you can watch Harry Potter to like get laid off of. So do that. Do better, Kevin. Watch Harry Potter with someone else. Actually, I've never even got close to getting laid off Harry Potter. I'm not even gonna lie. As a guy who plays Quidditch, it's very funny because it's never stopped me from like me playing Quidditch. As far as I know, has never stopped a woman from talking to me. And I'll say this is a guy, I used to put it in my Tinder bio when I was on Tinder, back when I was single and stuff like that. I used to put it on my Tinder bio, and nobody ever said anything about it. They tried to make, you know what ladies would do? They would use it as an icebreaker. So they would use it as a way to try and like make fun of me, but at the same time, like, you know what happened. But yeah, as soon as like I honestly like as soon as a girl made fun of me for it, I was like, oh, she's not actually making fun of me for playing Quidditch. She just wants something to say to try and like let me know that she's cool with it or whatever kind of deal. Because you know, there's somebody who supposedly listens to this podcast on a regular basis that makes fun of Quidditch all the time, but is, you know, a big fan in a certain way. You know what I mean? I'm kidding. Let's see. What else? Aw, man. Half-Blood Prince is like the second best movie. I'm not even gonna lie, bro. I will say Half-Blood Prince is my favorite one, honestly. I'm kidding. It's not my favorite one. Everybody knows my favorite Harry Potter novel is Half-Blood Prince. I'm sorry, not Half-Blood Prince. It is, in fact, the Goblet of Fire. Sorry, I'm trying to do 2 things at one time, and one of them just made us skip 2 frames, so I'm already really pissed about that. I don't know what it is. I thought we had the settings fixed because, guys, like last week we were streaming on YouTube and on Twitch, which we are still doing here, but we were doing that before. Goblet of Fire is hands down the best Harry Potter one. Shout out to everybody in the chat, including Kevin. Somebody else is in there too, so shout out to them, whoever that is, lurking in the distance. Shout out to Kevin for being like the number one fan of this podcast. Like when it blows up at some point, which may never happen, be big time. We're gonna talk about some sad stuff today, guys. Some sad stuff in sports. So it's all good. Don't worry. It's gonna be sad, but it won't be that sad. I'm kidding. It's gonna be really bad. It's gonna be bad because it's gonna be one. If you listen to this podcast, you probably like the person that I'm gonna talk about in a bad situation right now. So, I'd like to imagine that our fandom overlaps. But who knows? You never know. You never know who you're gonna attract as a fan. Ooh. Delete that. Almost put got free publicity for some random TV station in Tennessee for some reason. But yeah, this week in NFL picks, guys, we're in the top 1%. It's going to be tough for us to stay up there. I'm not going to lie to you, but we're going to get it done. We're going to use our logic. We're going to use our understanding of football as a whole. And we're going to use a little bit of understanding that chaos happens. And because the last couple of weeks, I will point out, I've been kind of hitting on the chaos games. Like the games that seem like the winner. Like I've been calling the upsets pretty good lately. I'm going to take that as a big win for me personally. After years and years of losing, I deserve a few. Maybe this is my season. Maybe this is my year for NFL football, guys. Who knows? But yeah, we're going to get the show started here in a second. I'm trying to do better about doing this whole warm-up period leading up to the show and everything like that, especially considering all it takes is for me to set up the ticker while this is going on, and it'll kill a bunch of time. Appreciate you, Kevin. I appreciate the support at all times. Intro for what? Like an intro video? I've been thinking about doing that. I also been thinking about trying to do this whole voiceover thing. We'll see. I actually talked, speaking of personal stuff, because it's supposed to be a way that you endear yourself to people, right? Personal stuff. Today I had a conversation with a recruiter kind of deal. It's a person that's supposed to help me find my next job or something like that. And I heard this older guy at work complaining about how they fucked up his resume kind of deal. And I'm like, I highly doubt that they actually messed up your resume. I feel like the people who specialize in getting people jobs probably know more about resumes than you do. Person who is a part of Team USA air guitar. Literally a guy who's on Team USA air guitar. It's very funny, but I think he has a massive disconnect with how the world functions as a whole, especially considering since he's worked at my job that I've been at for about 15 years. So, he definitely that's another thing too. You hear, of course I'm young and I just got there and stuff like that. I'm 29 years old. So I just got there. Right. And, the big thing to point out, hold on. Sorry. I'm trying to fix this certain thing that's going on right now, I just wanted to point out how my mom has been working at her job for 25 years kind of deal, and there's a massive disconnect between how millennials find themselves bouncing from job to job because jobs treat you horribly or you move on in your life and stuff like that, and there are other Nine. Yeah, sorry, I'm reading the chat here. Quid Kevin, who's in the chat over here, as always, holding it down for the chat. He says he looks at a ton of resumes, which he does. Kevin is a person I know in real life. He's a heavy hitter. He's been working at his job for 9 years. So if you ever have worked at Chevron and didn't get a job, blame it on Kevin. He told him that you sucked. I'm kidding. He did not. He would never say that. Kevin's too nice of a guy to tell you that you suck. Unless you're unless you're a bad person, Kevin's usually not going to tell you that you suck as a human being. Man, We got our first tournament next week. But, like, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to what I was saying before. There's a huge divide of the people who are just kind of starting out their working lives and the people who have been working at this place for years. Literally longer than I've been alive, for the most part. There's a guy who's worked at my job. I'm 29 years old. There's a guy who's worked at my job where I work at now. He's worked there for my entire adult life, basically, since I turned 18. He was working there, working in TV and stuff like that. So I always found it kind of trippy when you kind of, you talk to that type of person, and the fact of the matter is they spend a lot of time like not adjusting or not understanding how the outside world works, like in terms of like how getting a new job goes, how interviewing goes as a process, and like having to deal with people in the interview process, or how to like keep a stiff upper lip about how like people are gonna tell you one thing and just ignore you. Like I saw Molly McMenamin, who is a agent, like literally an agent, a sports agent, and she talked about like, hey, is it common for people to send interviews or like go to interviews or whatever and just like not hear back from the companies that they're working with? And I'm like, yeah, it's very common. Like pretty much every job I've ever had, or pretty much every job I've ever interviewed for is like either you got it or you didn't. Like there's no like, hey, just calling to let you know we moved on in the process. Maybe you get an email, maybe they're kind enough and they send you an email or something like that. But yeah, I agree, Molly. We need to do better as like a society as a whole in terms of this kind of stuff, in terms of how we treat people who are seeking a job. And I get it. You got like 50 billion people applying for a job, especially got 50 billion people applying for a shitty job, which is like a legitimate thing. You got a bunch of people applying for like a bad job that is got like high turnover retention. HR people just don't message you back. It's just how it goes. Sorry. We also got to do one more thing in the warm up here. Trying to get the hydration breaks going. There's your ASMR for this episode. I don't know why we're skipping frames. I gotta close some other stuff, I'm sure. But yeah, we're skipping frames right now. We haven't even started the podcast stream, so I'm probably gonna be really pissed about how this episode comes out. Anyway, closing that tab that had videos running on it. Probably gonna also I need to send tweets out from Twitter, so I can't close Twitter just yet. Damn, that's wild, man. Chris Paul bought 500 tickets for the Phoenix Mercury game, which, by the way, the Phoenix Mercury cannot play in their home arena because of like some really cool musician who's coming through or something like that. He's performing in the Mohegan Sun Arena, which is where I think the Sun also play. Just gonna pour these up a little bit here. There we go. By the way, I already drank 4 of these beforehand, and in the midst of drinking them, I realized I had not had anything to eat since 10:30 a.m. But we're not going to talk about that, all right? Shout out Jack Daniels, official not sponsor of the NFL and of this episode. Other things to go about. Oh, see, we skipped another frame. Oh my God, it's gonna piss me off. 9 years. It was true. I think more frames dropped, but I don't know. It did. One more frame dropped, Kevin. Jack and Coke. You are correct. We got the glasses going here. Got the little custom glasses going on. There's just one place I go to. When you buy Jack and Coke from them, they automatically give you like the fancy one, the one that costs like $3 more, with the glasses and all that kind of stuff in it. Like that's the only kind of whiskey that they carry, but they charge you like the regular price for it. So, we gotta do some social media stuff. But yeah, like I was saying, I work at this gig. I work at this job and it's almost over. My official end date is October 19th. Oh my God, my boy. Oh my God. My dude Riley is on air right now, so it's a little tough. Fancy stopped at a liquor store in Baltimore. Most unsafe I've felt in years. That's really weird, Kevin, because you live in Houston, Texas. You should feel unsafe around here all the time. Pretty much everyone you come across is strapped up in some way, shape, or form. They're either larger than you as a person or they have a gun. So can't say the same thing about Maryland. Who knows? Let's see if we're on YouTube this week, because I've really figured out that last week we were not on YouTube, which is interesting. We were not streaming live on YouTube last week, and it did not, or it didn't save it. One of the two. Maybe it is. Oh, no, we're live. We're live on YouTube. So It's good to know the audio's working. Let's move on. Wait, you went to a liquor store in Baltimore? When did you go to a liquor store in Baltimore? You mean that one time we went with like Shoosh and Phil? Is that what you're talking about? We were perfectly fine. That was where we ate food the night before. It was down the street from our hotel, which is in like a really nice part of town. Maybe you went to a different liquor store than I did. We went to the same liquor store. Oh, my bad. I forgot. Kevin is currently in Baltimore. We definitely just skipped a frame right there. Not cool at all. Hold on. We're gonna get to the bottom of this. Guys. Click on a stat to add it to your footer. Make sure these settings are correct. There's a fucking variable. Let me tune up these variable streams right here real quick before they piss me off. We're streaming live on YouTube. Sorry guys, I gotta do all this. Social media stuff before we go live, which is stupid. Interesting. I will tell you this. That does fit the description of Baltimore, Maryland. That reminds me, I haven't talked to Lisa this week. I should probably do that. Where else are we live at? Oh yeah, we live. What the fuck? Gain followers on my personal Instagram account. Shout out to you guys. Yeah, we're gonna start the show up here in a couple of minutes. I'm trying to get through all the stupid social media stuff because I can only do it when we're live, and then of course we'll start the podcast, and that's when the energy picks up a lot, guys. So you gotta be ready. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Do get your drinks ready for the hydration break. I got 4 double whiskey cokes, which will make it 8 for me today. It's been one hell of a day. Honestly, I've been kind of dreading doing this show because I had to do so much. Had to do so much to prepare for the show, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about sports. We got NFL stuff. We got NBA drama that's going on. I'm pretty sure we just skipped another frame, which is fucking... Oh, no, we're good. Never mind. Sorry, something fixed it. But yeah, we got... what is it? NBA stuff. We're going to talk about the WNBA Playoffs for a little bit there. It's actually been very, very entertaining, and one of the games is tomorrow. We got the best and the worst that sports has to offer. We're going to talk about TimTheTatman, the man himself, the myth, the legend, and something major that happened in his life. So that's pretty cool. And other sports stuff. If you want to talk about something sports related, drop it in the comments. Drop it in the drop it below. Hold on. Yeah, drop it in the comments on Twitch or on YouTube if you're watching there, and we will talk about it. We are going to talk about your favorite team. We always are going to talk about your favorite team in all the sports, so don't worry. Live chat there. I'm trying to find the link. I just got to be quiet for a second so I can think. But yeah, we'll find the link here. Spreaker. Here we go. Man, sometimes I watch these, like live streamers and stuff like that, and I feel like I put like a lot of, I haven't started the Spreaker stream, so that's probably why. I feel like I put like a shit ton of work in terms of like trying to fill the dead air, and they're just okay with like being chill and like not saying anything, which I respect to a certain degree. As I'm typing out this message on Twitter, which of course I'm gonna report sports podcast is listen and watch live. Yeah, the next evolution of this whole thing is me finding out my Facebook password and being able to go on Facebook Live at the same time. So big things coming up, as one would say. Hopefully that's not like cultural appropriation, since you know what? I'm not even Jamaican. I'm not gonna lie. Quiet is fine. As an only child, guys. The secret that I'm an only child. I don't think I told you guys that. Whoever watches the show afterwards, but I am an only child, so I understand quiet very much. So it's actually something that I pride myself on. And as time has gone on throughout my life, I realize a lot of people cannot enjoy the quiet, and that is slightly disturbing. in a certain way. Maybe I'm wilding. Who knows? Let me know. Listen and watch. Oh, come on. This sucks, dude. Anyway. YouTube. Oh, man. You guys ever wonder how many people in your real life listen to your podcast? Because this one Quidditch player I tried to recruit a couple of years ago, her name is Jules. Shout out to her. She actually listened to the podcast and was just like, "Hey, Ashton, your show's actually really good, and I don't even like sports." Which, by the way, I hear that like 1,000,000,001 times a day, and it honestly never gets old. Because if I can get the people who don't like sports to listen to what I have to say, maybe it's me, the person they enjoy. And if that's the case, then I'll be very successful at this whole like talking into a microphone thing on a regular basis. But hey, we haven't gone mainstream yet. We're working our way towards that. Especially now that like my contract is about to end. I've been trying to do a better job about not saying I'm going to get fired. Because I'm not getting fired. My contract was set to end to begin with. But yeah, here we go. Here we go. I have a friend who'd be very proud of that one. That was a good Mario impersonation. Copy, send it. That's unimportant. That's from a Facebook group I don't give a shit about. That's from another Facebook group I don't care about. Alex Morgan calling out the squad today. Shout out to her. We live. We out here in the streets. We out here. We outside. As some people would say. All right. Let's get it popping, guys. Broke Boy Sports Podcast, episode 158. Yeah, we're at 158, guys. Crazy shit, right? Remember, our goal is to get to 3,000 downloads this year. We got 1,000 last year. Trying to do a little bit more than that. Big football season coming at 158. Broke Boy Sports Podcast. What did I name this episode again? God damn it. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I forgot what I named the episode. It has like deep meaning sometimes, and then other times it's just a funny phrase. This week, I think it is... Oh, shit. What is this episode called? It's... Oh, Collision Course. My bad. Yeah. Because this is a big week in the world of football. This is a very, very big week, and we'll talk about why. Collision Course. There we go. NFL, NBA, WNBA. Guess what, guys? We're gonna talk about a bunch of major sports. None of them are Major League Baseball for a reason. Mainly because it's boring. What do I know? Katie Nolan. Yeah, we're talking about Katie today. And Washington football team. Anyway. Alright, y'all. Let's get it started. Let's get this... Hold on. Sorry. Hey, we're doing 2 hydration breaks. Oh, God. That one does not have enough Coke in it. We're doing 2 hydration breaks this show. So make sure you pour up and get it ready. And in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody else in between, I'm Ashton Gene Lewis. This is the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. We're live on Twitch and on YouTube, which means I morally am obligated and contractually obligated to say, hello, YouTube. Hey, what's up, guys? Make sure you like and subscribe and smash that notification button. Sorry, I'm new to YouTube, so I got to work on the jargon as it goes on. But yeah, we're here for the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. It's episode 158. called Collision Course, which, by the way, I am feeling like in the back of my mind somewhere in my subconscious that we've actually named another episode Collision Course. Only one way to find that out, and it's to search after this episode is over. So as far as we know right now, this is the first time we've ever named an episode Collision Course. It is Friday. Hold on. Let me check the date. Friday, October 1st. Congratulations, you've made it to spooky season, which, sad to say, a lot of people cannot say that they have. But nonetheless, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to get this one done, ready to go out here and do the thing. We're out here doing podcasting, we're out here doing Twitch, and we're out here YouTubing and all that kind of jazz like that. Shout out to everybody who's in the chat. Where's the intro music, Kevin? It's probably because of some stupid setting that I didn't restore after I recorded something for my Quidditch playbook, which is a really weird thing to say, but it's a very true thing. Sorry you couldn't hear the intro music, man. It was just me being dead silent for like 20 seconds or something like that. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we're here, and we are not queer, but we do support our queer brothers and sisters out there. Shout out to them. Hopefully they're having a great weekend and having a great day. Nonetheless, what are we here to talk about? Oh, right. The best and the worst that sports has to offer. Shout out to everybody listening to the podcast on iHeartRadio, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Deezer, on Podchaser, and of course that like really random, specifically for India podcast platform. I don't know what the actual name of it is. I'm not going to lie to you guys. And at some point, Amazon hit me up about being on their podcast platform. Maybe I should have said no so that they, at some point, if this thing does go mainstream, they don't make a ton of money off of me, all that kind of jazz like that. But ladies and gents, we are here. It's a Friday. We got a lot to talk about. We're talking about football. We're talking about NBA. We're talking about the WNBA. We got a lot to talk about. Katie Nolan. We're going to talk about her, Ron Rivera, and a whole flurry of other things. But first and foremost, we need to talk about Nerd News, which is the segment where we literally talk about esports stuff that goes on. Sorry about that. Got that cropped incorrectly. But nonetheless, this week's episode, or this week's title episode for Nerd News, or this week's topic, is none other than TimTheTatman. If you're not familiar with him, he is one of the most popular Twitch now YouTube streamers exclusively, because Twitch doesn't help out guys that are big time like TimTheTatman. They're getting more off of Tim than he is getting off of them, and he doesn't feel like it's a 50-50 equity split. He has become one of the biggest names in all of esports, and he has moved on to YouTube. I have a friend who is a big, like, almost religious watcher of TimTheTatman, who does hour-long streams. He basically does your entire work day with you, and plays video games across the path of it and all that kind of stuff like that. Immensely talented man, and new father. From what I understand, well, relatively new father. I think his kid is not like newborn or something like that. But nonetheless, he's out here doing the damn thing. And shout out to him. He also just signed for a big money deal here. And that's why we're talking about him for Nerd News. TimTheTatman signed with Complexity Gaming. He is, which by the way, is owned by his favorite NFL team, the Dallas Cowboys, which, typically would be a disqualifier for me to even like utter your name if you're a Cowboys fan, because let's be honest, Dallas is a horrible place where horrible people come from. But anyway, as a Houstonian, that's my opinion on Dallas, right? But yeah, shout out to TimTheTatman for going out there and getting that money. He is also going to become a part owner, and it looks like pretty close to majority owner of Complexity Gaming. Over the next 3 years, he's going to slowly receive 2.7 million shares in Complexity Gaming, which is actually kind of smart on the contract dealing side for Complexity, because it basically locks him in to the overall success of Complexity, which means he's going to put his best foot forward. And then on top of that, he's also going to have to stick around for more than just a year and move on to the next deal. And who knows what's going to happen. He has to stick around for 3 years, and there's no telling what can happen in 3 years. It could be terrible. It could be amazing. It could be both at the same time. Let's be honest. But yeah, nonetheless, shout out to TimTheTatman for holding it down on that one and getting that bread out there, and hopefully getting to a point where a regular guy becomes rich off of something later on, basically because he plays video games, which it tickles me pink when I hear stuff like that. If people out there understand that phrase and don't think it's weird, I find it amazing that somebody can take something that they just truly enjoy doing, which is, of course, like playing video games, and turn it into something valuable, turn it into something lucrative for them as a revenue source. Anyway, we move on, ladies and gentlemen. We got a lot of stuff to get through, and luckily today we got plenty of time to do it. So here we go. Best of the best. As you guys know, we build this show as the best and the worst that sports has to offer. And if you didn't know, now you know. We build this show as the best and the worst that sports has to offer every single week. I try to scour all of the internet for the worst things that have happened in sports and the best things as well. And this is what I got for best of the best for you this week. This is heartwarming and straight from the NFL. Ron Rivera, if you guys know him, consistently one of the best and one of the most revered coaches in all of the NFL. He's made huge strides in terms of like helping normalize women coaching in the NFL. He's also done a great job of turning around the franchise that is the Washington football team by really, honestly, like I've never seen something happen this quick, because now Washington is looking like one of the best teams, one of the middling teams in the NFL, when just a year ago they were one of the worst. And that's all thanks to Ron Rivera, his efforts, and also his understanding of football and the personnel that they have. Things are looking a little rough to start the season, but I think when we get to the breakdowns, you'll feel like just a tad bit more confident about everything that's going to go down. But nonetheless, Ron Rivera was diagnosed with cancer just 2 years ago, and as of now, he is 1 year in remission. He got his biopsy, and it showed that he is currently in remission. He's got 25, and as a sign of respect and love for Ron Rivera, the team donated $25,000 to St. Jude's. If you don't know what St. Jude's is, it is a hospital that solely operates off the factor that if you get admitted there, you do not have to pay anything. So it is vastly important to not only the fabric of the United States of America, which has many would argue an antiquated version of how healthcare should be adjudicated, especially for the wealthiest nation on the face of the planet. We have plenty of money to make sure that people get to live. And on top of that, we have a Bill of Rights that says people have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And many would argue that the right to life includes healthcare. Nonetheless, $25,000 going to St. Jude's thanks to the courtesy and love from either the Washington football team. I would imagine it didn't come from the players, because I feel like the players would donate a lot more. And that's a huge turnaround from what we saw earlier in the season, where like Montez Sweat was out here talking about he's still doing his research about the vaccine, which I'm assuming he still is. I'm assuming Montez, after Washington football team practices, is heading back to the lab and checking his cultures in terms of like how the vaccine reacted to COVID cells, and really trying to get a real good grasp on how it affects the human body. I'm sure that's exactly what Montez Sweat is doing. But nonetheless, that is best of the best, because sometimes it is hard to find good things that happen in the realm of sports, and sometimes it is not. That was a layup, and I took it. There we go, ladies and gents. We are now up to our hydration break this episode here. If you're not familiar with the show, we have 2 hydration breaks throughout the course of the show, where we take a moment to step back, sit back, and we either hydrate ourselves with some water, or you hydrate yourselves with something else. If you can't see, slightly off camera, I have 4 double whiskey Cokes, which hopefully I'm not going to finish all 4 in the course of this show. I doubt that'll be the case, but I'm gonna enjoy myself here. You're gonna do the same as you listen to the classical stylings of one Christina Gukis. We're gonna listen to Own the Night. It is 3 minutes and 15 seconds, and when we come back, we'll do worst of the worst in all the sports. So the worst thing that I heard about this week in sports, right here on the Brookwood Sports Podcast. Yo, my bad. I feel like we play On the Night all the time. I'm going to play a different one. 2 minutes and 46 seconds. This is Closure.
I'm walking the bull, go, out for the. I'm walking the bull, go, out for the. I'm walking the bull, go, out for the. Out for the. I'm walking the bull, go. Out for the. I'm walking the bull, go. Out for the. I'm walking the bull, go. Out for the.
Yeah, we did it, guys. I fixed the sound on Twitch. Took about a couple of seconds of clicking around. Who would have thought? The answers are right there in front of me. It's just about understanding the tool that I'm utilizing. Shout out to Streamlabs OBS for always holding it down, for always making the magic on this show be able to be possible. Shout out to everybody who's watching and listening throughout the course of the week. Shout out to you. I will say, if you get to this episode before Football Sunday, it's going to behoove you a lot more. We're currently in the top 1% in terms of picks so far on the NFL season. We got another dub on Thursday Night Football because we predicted correctly that the Cincinnati Bengals were going to go out there and get that dub. It was pretty easy, though, not going to lie. Mainly because the Jacksonville Jaguars are poor when it comes to talent assessment. But that's a discussion for another day. We got worse to the worst, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't recognize who this man is right now on your screen, if you're watching on Twitch or YouTube, please allow me to explain. Worse to the worst, CJ Henderson had a press conference after being traded away from the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 5th-round pick and Sam Darnold. I think they also got a 3rd-round pick in exchange for him. CJ Henderson, a couple years ago, was the 9th pick overall in the course of the draft. And if you go look at his draft, the other people around him, you would say are more successful, mainly because they didn't go to like the worst possible situation in the NFL. So that usually helps in terms of like your overall success as an NFL player. Typically helps in the long run. But nonetheless, we'll talk about things outside of that, shall we? We'll talk about the other stuff that happened when CJ Henderson went to said interview for the first time ever as an NFL player for the Carolina Panthers, who are 3-0. Multiple journalists asked him what he thought of the coaching staff. He had been there for like less than a day, so I found that question to be a little weird. He's like, hey, are these guys who traded resources away for you also being nice to you? And he's like, yeah, like, you know, they're not telling me that I suck or anything. If you can see the photo that I have of CJ Henderson, that's kind of how his face looked throughout the course of this interview. Kind of like this emotionless, kind of like faceless scowl. Maybe that's a reaction to the pressures of like media that's surrounding him and stuff like that. Because I totally understand if that's the situation where he feels like, oh, for me to I have to keep myself even keeled inside these media press conferences and stuff like that, because you never know what kind of question a person is going to ask you, especially as a high-level draft pick who got traded away from the team that drafted him pretty soon in what looks to be a complete bailout on him as a player. But nonetheless, we talk about bigger, more grandiose concepts here. The only person that should really be upset about what happened in the course of this trade is Dan Arnold. Dan Arnold has been a part of not only the New England Patriots before he got there, but also a part of the Carolina Panthers. He was what looked to be their best tight end since Greg Olsen has left there. He was doing a killer job. He actually got a couple of catches on Thursday Night Football versus the Cincinnati Bengals and got a lot of yards to go along with it. And he's the guy who went from the 3-0 team to the 0-3 team. That looks like they have no hope or any possibility of being successful later on. But yeah, that's kind of the weird part about this whole thing. Jacksonville must be like secretly lit. Like Jacksonville must be amazing for somebody who leaves a 3-0 or leaves a 0-3 football team that looked completely inept to join a 3-0 team that looks like it's the hottest team in the NFL, led by a guy who a lot of people believe has turned the corner in terms of like revitalizing his career in Sam Darnold, and on top of that, you're under the leadership of Matt Rule, who has been one of the quickest risers in all of football. Because where he started off at Temple, turning Temple into a powerhouse, and then moving on to Baylor, revitalizing Baylor at least temporarily, and then moving on to the NFL level and somehow turning around the Carolina Panthers in just a couple of years. It's really weird that a guy who had that going for him, or a guy who's joining that team, looks like that on the camera. And maybe it was because he got he didn't have a ton of time in terms of rest to get to Carolina. But cheer up a little bit, man. You're on an actually good football team. Cheer up a little bit, CJ. I thought that was worst of the worst, because you hate to see professional athletes get in a situation where they end up getting moved from place to place, right? Like that's a thing that a lot of us don't understand. CJ Henderson is probably going to be living in an apartment for the entire season that is to come, no matter how far the Carolina Panthers go, and that's going to be a bummer for him, because he's going to be away from the people that he's grown and gotten attachments to. He's no longer around a lot of his football friends and all that kind of stuff like that, and he's got to start his entire life over in a new city where he doesn't even know like where to get a car from necessarily right now, right? So that's a little tough. And then on top of that, he's probably if he's accustomed to sleeping with somebody, kind of dealing like just even next to him or something like that. I don't know if CJ Henderson has like a wife or anything like that, but he's gonna be alone for a little while he like resets his life. And I doubt whoever he left behind in Jacksonville is just gonna immediately follow him to Carolina, but that seems to be the case right now for CJ Henderson. So I understand the negativity that comes along with it, the bummer type situation that comes along with making that move and being a part of a trade, but I think there's some solace you can take away from in getting away from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Moving on, ladies and gents, we got media suggestions for this week, and hopefully the audio doesn't play on this because I think I have it muted. But yeah, anyway, media suggestions for this week. Steph Curry interviewed Michael Jordan on his YouTube channel at the Ryder Cup. Beautiful backdrop here if you're watching on Twitch or YouTube or anything like that. If you're listening on audio-wise, it's Steph Curry in his golf gear, Michael Jordan in his golf gear. If you didn't see that absolutely mythical type picture that came out this past week as Team USA dominated the Ryder Cup and kicked the shit out of Europe. Anyway, moving on, there was a picture of, because Michael Jordan makes it a point, because since he's retired, he's become a huge, even when he was playing, he was a huge golf fan, because it's one of the few sports that he's like not absolutely dominant at, right? So he actually, it's one of the few sports that challenges him and that he can continue to play into his older age, which, by the way, is like the number one reason why I try and play competitive sports as long as I possibly fucking can, because at some point I'm gonna just have to resign myself to playing golf, and that's an expensive ass sport. So either I gotta get really good at this whole sports casting thing really, really quickly, or I'm gonna have to find another job that pays a lot more money pretty soon here. But until then, I'll continue to play the sports that are risky to my joints, my knees, and my ankles, because I mean, guys, like I did break my leg earlier this summer, so there's that. Anyway, media suggestion is to go watch this, because it's actually a really interesting conversation. One, because Steph Curry because Michael Jordan is a big cigar smoker, and I'm a big fan of cigars. They didn't talk about cigars at all, but nonetheless, Michael Jordan is one of the greatest athletes to ever exist, one of the greatest competitors to ever be in the game, right? To go along with it, like he had the competitive spirit plus the actual skill to execute the stuff to take his game to the next level and really go out there and destroy people. But nonetheless, this is a great conversation between two amazing next level athletes. And Michael Jordan, like if you're one of the athletes on the Ryder Cup team for Team USA, you have to be fucking stoked that because at one point they asked multiple questions about Steph Curry asked multiple questions about like, yo, whose game would you want to steal? Like what guy do you look up to the most on the Ryder Cup team? And he actually names people's names. And if you're one of those guys, you got to be pumped about that, man. Michael Jordan says that you're one of the best at your game. He's envious of your game in some sport that is an athletic endeavor. You got to be pumped about that. Anyway, Michael Jordan, and like you see here in this video, he's gone to multiple renditions of the Ryder Cup in different ways, and he just sits out there like he's just like in the world. Like he's just a regular person. He's Michael Jordan. It's pretty cool, even just to see those little highlights or whatever. But definitely check it out. It is worth your time, especially if you're an athlete or a person who wants to be competitive or a person who's competitive in life in general, to kind of hear from a guy who is a reasonable competitor. Like, a lot of the stuff that you hear about Michael Jordan is like unreasonable level type shit, right? But I think in this interview, you get a glimpse into what it's like to be an actual competitor, where you don't have to disrespect the person that's directly in front of you. So many of you guys, so many athletes you see, because, the rise of guys like destroying and stuff like that. And not to say that destroying is doing anything wrong. It's just that so many people believe that to be competitive, you have to disrespect your opponent. And Michael Jordan clearly is humbled and respects the people who play golf at a high level, because it's something that he wishes that he could do as an individual athlete, right? Like, as a high level athlete, that's something that he wants to do, and he respects and reveres the people that he sees do it on a regular basis. And he's one of the best in the world, one of the best athletes in the world. And even he can't figure out a way to go out there and be elite at golf. That's how tough golf is. And of course, he's just out there chilling. Like, it's a great time to see. Like, everybody else looks at him as Michael Jordan. To him, he's just himself, right? And there's so many videos of him just being like chilling out in the back corner, being like, "Oh man, look at this guy swing. That's fucking sick." And sometimes you forget that top level athletes are sometimes the biggest fans on the face of the planet. Like I said, I've mentioned it before many times, and it's actually going off on TikTok right now. There's like this sound from the Incredibles movie where Mr. Incredible lifts up a car, and one of the kids is just like, he sees it for like half a second. And then he keeps coming back every single day, and he keeps seeing him, and he keeps looking at him. He's like, and Mr. Incredible finally gets pissed off because he is forced to be like a regular person, right? He's like, "What are you looking at?" And he's just like, "I want to see something. I don't know. I just want to see something incredible." And I feel like that's what Michael Jordan had that feeling like in this interview. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, what else we got here? Oh, we got about a week ago, there had been no hip-hop acts to headline the Super Bowl. If you don't know what About a Week Ago is, it is a segment that talks about the viciousness of the 24-hour news cycle, how quickly we forget and remember things. So about a week ago, there had never been a hip-hop or rap act to headline the Super Bowl, and this week, there are 4, and Mary J. Blige. Yep. It's going to be amazing. It's Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Eminem, Kendrick Lamar, and Mary J. Blige that are supposed to, which, by the way, like, you could have just booked them all independently for like the next 5 years, and I would have died a happy man by the time that all that had come to its end, right? But nonetheless, they've put them all on the same Super Bowl halftime, which means that the Super Bowl halftime show is probably going to be the longest that it's ever been, which we can only hope for, right? There's no way that you can go out here and be able to get the respect that Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, who has basically molded the way that we listen to hip hop today, and Kendrick Lamar, who has taken rap to a whole nother level. Like, you're talking about a man who's won a Nobel Peace Prize, right? For To Pimp a Butterfly. Eminem, one of the greatest rappers of all time. Whatever you have to say about him, Eminem is one of the greatest of all time in the game. And honestly, I feel like a lot of people can learn a lot about themselves from Eminem because he's gone through such an evolution as a human being. And he's even talked about, his struggles and his fights with the rage that lives and exists in his heart all the time, and how he knows that a lot of people like when he's angry. And he just doesn't like when he's angry. He knows that he makes better music when he's angry, and he chooses not to embrace that. Kind of similar to what we talked about Nick Diaz a little bit last week. And by the way, Nick lost his fight. And a lot of people were a little disappointed with what happened because it felt like Nick, after all this time, ring rust hit him. And it was a little disappointing because you heard a guy, like we talked about before, seemed like he was terrified of the situation that he was being put in, which is relatable. Let's be honest. It's a fist fight, and the objective of the person that you're fighting is to knock you unconscious. Nonetheless, we move on to about a week ago, ladies and gents, and like I said, we talked about the greatest hip-hop show of all time possibly coming up here. Honestly, you can go back and look at Billboard.com actually released an article about all the hip hop acts that have ever been involved with the Super Bowl, because Nelly's done it a couple times. We saw last year with Big Boy being a part of the ATLians one or whatever. But this year, this is like they're front and center. Hip hop and rap is front and center, and it's always been one of the few genres that has never like really made it big time. And that's why a lot of people We're frustrated with the selection of guys like Coldplay. And to the credit of Coldplay, they're one of the greatest bands of my time, right? Like, there's no question about that whatsoever in terms of, like, what Coldplay has done for music. But what we're talking about hip-hop-wise, I mean, we're talking about all-time greats, like legends of the game. And it's all because the Super Bowl is happening in L.A. this year at SoFi Stadium, which, of course, is like the big new shiny jewel of the NFL, like the epitome of what future of stadiums is supposed to look like. The most important thing that I feel like a couple of things are going to happen. One, the secret guest is 100% Ice Cube, right? Like, to try and get as many members of NWA back together as possible for the Super Bowl in LA, for a bunch of guys who grew up just like writing raps in a fucking notepad to be like, hey, all these years later, we are performing at the Super Bowl after we've all become like legendary rappers, right? And if they can get, is MC Ren even still alive? Because if there's a man who has died from the disrespect that has been paid to him over the course of the years for NWA, it's got to be MC Ren. I know Eazy-E's not alive, but nonetheless, they're going to get as many members of NWA together as possible to make that pop off. Snoop Dogg, I had a friend who was in the group chat talking about how they need to get the Tupac hologram out because if you remember, Snoop Dogg actually performed the Tupac hologram at Lollapalooza. Last time, I think it was Lollapalooza or was it Coachella? Somebody hit me up in the comments and let me know. But nonetheless, that it was hilarious. But nonetheless, I expect this Super Bowl halftime show to be one for the books. And it is also not lost on me that this is very obviously a ploy by the NFL, like as a whole, to, you know, they're like the blacks. The NFL's like, we need to make sure the blacks think that we like them. So we're going to go out here, we're going to get the black music for the black people and make sure that they're cool with it. But nonetheless, everything that's come along with, and honestly, if you're gonna do an LA themed Super Bowl, there are a lot of bands that you could have chosen for sure. And I'm just glad that the pressure finally got to the NFL and they did something cool for once for the halftime show. And I know Beyonce's done it twice now, but this looks like it is going to be legendary type stuff is what we're dealing with here, and I can't wait to see what happens. Overall, what else was I gonna say? Oh. At some point, there's got to be an homage to Nipsey Hussle, I would imagine, as he just passed a couple of years ago. That reminds me, also go check out that 30 for 30, the podcast 30 for 30 they did on Nipsey Hussle is called, what is it, Victory Lap? I think it is. But yeah, The King of Crenshaw is what it's called. I don't know why I said Victory Lap. But Victory Lap is the name of Nipsey Hussle's last album. But yeah, it's called The King of Crenshaw. So go check it out. It's a 30 for 30 special on what Nipsey Hussle meant in terms of the realm of sports. Because as you know, a lot of NBA athletes have come from LA. And they've been heavily influenced by Nipsey Hussle because he was like one of the few local rappers to go like mainstream for a lot of people. That just doesn't happen anymore. Moving on. We got, what else we got here? We need to talk about some money. We talking money or we talking money? One of my favorite segments because it's about money, and I hope I get a lot of it pretty soon here. It was Coachella. Shout out whoever hopped into, it's Stacy. Shout out to you. It's _Stacy. Go follow her on Twitch. Anyway, we talking money or we talking money out here. It's a segment where we talk about money. Katie Nolan, if you guys are not familiar with her, she's an ESPN personality that really has endeared herself. She started from the ground up. She was just posting YouTube. She literally just like posting sports videos on YouTube in like the basement of her old job, which is like a bar in Boston, I believe it was, when it was all said and done, and found herself all the way up to consistently hosting highly questionable on ESPN on a regular basis. Like that's what happened. And as time has gone on, it just came out yesterday that Katie Nolan has either been fired or she is released or she's resigned from her position at ESPN. She has been very open about her struggles with mental health and her slow progression of getting to this point. It's actually been really painful for me personally to watch because I believe Katie Nolan is what we need more of in sports in terms of, we'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it at the end of my argument here, but this is what's happened to Katie Nolan in the past like year and a half, right? They've been slow bleeding her to death on a national scale. If you pay attention to her life, they canceled her TV show Always Late with Katie Nolan, basically after keeping her on ice for like a year after she left FS1, which I'm assuming was because because of her non-compete. So she was getting paid by ESPN, but she couldn't be on air immediately after leaving FS1, which is where she was in between the whole like YouTube show blowing up to FS1 to getting onto ESPN. She was also a part of the ESPN Snapchat Sports Center that they used to pull off all the time, which I'm assuming they still do. But nonetheless, they fired her best friend Ashley Braband this past summer in the middle of the pandemic, essentially, and then they did not renew the contract of one of her best producers, who's also a co-host on her podcast along with Ashley. His name is Jay. Those are two of her closest friends at ESPN, so they basically were all kind of like jettisoned out of her life like really immediately in the midst of a pandemic that was affecting her mental health heavily because she was forced into isolation. She was also kind of like constantly living in fear of catching COVID. If you listen to the podcast, some of them got kind of dark, and Ashley and Jay were the only reason that they were able to bring up the brevity of it all, and also it felt like you kind of connected with her in terms of feeling like she was cut off from the world, especially since she was living in New York at the time, and New York was hit very hard by COVID, and especially considering it had like a deadlier strain, right? Like it had a strain that was more likely to kill people, but not as infectious, but it was still highly infectious, right? That kind of happened. The podcast was popping off. The podcast is doing a great job, right? And then they gut all of the people who were in charge of like making the podcast happen. Then they added in two of the people who were further behind the scenes. They added in Travis, who was like, for me personally, Travis is a guy who like ruined the podcast for me. I actually stopped listening because he was on the show. He just kind of came off as like a wannabe alpha male type dude, and maybe he will do great if he was like at Barstool or something like that, but he kind of didn't lean into any of the jokes that Katie told. He didn't do a great job of like he didn't do a great job of like coming up with counters or anything like that. He kind of just was playing like the straight man sports fan kind of deal going on. And then they had one of her other producers come on, the person who was in charge of editing the show, come on to the show consistently and join up with it. And I feel like that's what kind of pushed a lot of people away. And as time went on, highly questionable the show that Dan Le Batard basically made Dan Le Batard and his father made immensely popular, right? Like that show that was on air, I think it was like 8 years or something like that, which is amazing to think about because it was like basically all of my time that I was in college and up until last year. Most of my adult life, highly questionable, has been on TV and been something that's been a part of my life because I remember watching it when I was in high school, like one of the summers that I was in high school or something like that. But with all that being said, they canceled that TV show. It meant so much to a lot of people who were like reasonable sports fans, and we'll talk about that and what it means a little bit later on. They canceled that show, which means Katie Nolan loses out on that job because she was on that show kind of hosting it, kind of being one of the personalities that was on that show before, and then like I said before, they recently canceled her podcast. They recently canceled Sports with Katie Nolan, the podcast, which I thought was doing pretty successful, but it was like the last straw that kind of like broke the camel's back and put Katie in a situation where she didn't have a job at ESPN anymore. She's clearly passionate about sports, and you saw her dreams kind of crumble in slow motion. Like she blew up to like a high level to the point where, you know, random people made money off of taking shots at her. Shout out to that piece of shit Jason Whitlock, right? Made money off of trying to call her out and calling her out for being fake. All that kind of stuff going on. Especially since I think Katie attracted more of the type of sports fan that I personally enjoy, a person who's reasonable about sports, but is also a hardcore fan, like a person who's also like a real person. Like a lot of sports fans try and talk about everything in life through the guise of like, oh man, like what if the team did this? What if the team traded these guys away? What in the unreasonable manners in terms of like, what if we gave them a 3rd round pick and they gave us 3 of their best players on their team? Like, we should be able to do that. Why can't we do that? Our GM sucks because we can't do that. Like, that kind of unreasonable sports fan, which, by the way, has built the empire that is ESPN and FS1 and NBC and CBS and ABC and all that stuff right there, right? But that's the opposite of that kind of fan is what Katie Nolan attracted. She attracted reasonable people who were sports fans, who wanted to who were open to enjoying other sports. Like she had multiple people who called in, especially since she's like a big EPL fan, right? Like she watched English Premier League football, kind of stuff like that. And she was able to give the women's perspective in terms of like, oh man, like I like watching soccer because a lot of these dudes are attractive, but also like soccer's kind of cool at the same time, right? And there was like weeks on weeks where a bunch of people asked and they were like, hey, Katie, can you help me like randomly pick a team that I'm going to root for this upcoming EPL season? I don't have a team to pick for. And I'm like, wow, like how many of those people How many of those type of fans do you think that Stephen A. Smith was able to create in his time with ESPN? And speaking of Stephen A. Smith, I feel like Stephen A. Smith has been on TV all of my life. I've been alive for 29 years. And I feel like Stephen A. Smith has been on TV all 29 years of my life. Katie Nolan has been on for like the last like 5 or 6, right? And I feel like I know way more about Katie Nolan as a person than I do about Stephen A. Smith as a human being. And maybe that's because I don't listen to Stephen A. Smith's podcast or anything like that. Or maybe it's a product of the fact that Katie Nolan's style is like being herself on air. And I find that I find that endearing to a certain degree. And wherever Katie ends up, I'm going to support, especially considering since it sounds like she may begin to offer here pretty soon from the group that's invested in the Dan Le Batard show, since they left the show and now they can do whatever they want to do, kind of deal. Meadowlark Media, which is also run by the guy who built the empire that is built the empire that is ESPN, the guy who came up with the concept of First Take, John Skipper, who had some drug addiction problems and kind of ended up getting fired and all the kind of stuff that went with it, but he's found his way back into sports media. He's trying to get Katie, apparently he wants to get Katie Nolan and Michelle Beadle, which you can say in the press all you want, but nonetheless, until you're out here offering that money, like, what are you supposed to really do? Hopefully, and fingers crossed, Katie did sign a deal in the course of the pandemic. Oh, that was the wild part too. I didn't mention that. All her friends got fired, and Katie was working through an extension with ESPN, and she did not know that her friends were in the process of being fired. And when she signed her extension, that's when they fired her friends. So that's got to be a little rough. That's got to be real tough. If you're me over here, if you're over here like, oh man, like I get to keep living the dream, and then like you get to keep living the dream without your friends. Sorry, dude. But hey, baby, ESPN's too big to fail. They'll find that they've already stumbled across a bunch of next level talent, despite all the stuff that's going on with Rachel Nichols, despite all the stuff that's going on with Maria Taylor, all the stuff that's going on with Katie Nolan and all the female talent, and a lot of other talented people as well, from canceling High Noon with Bomani Jones and Pablo Torre and everything like that. The leaving of Sarah McMullen from from Around the Horn. They're unstoppable. They found like they keep finding the best talent that sports has to offer, and there's a reason for that. It's because they're really good. And also, like, a lot of this generation of sports casters, including myself, grew up dreaming that we could work at ESPN, where like sports becomes it. Like, watching and enjoying sports is the only thing that exists. And that would be amazing. And I think because of that dream, they're going to continue to be able to attract the best talent there is in the game. And on top of that, even after you leave ESPN, however short your time with ESPN is, there's a lot of other organizations out there that will gladly, happily take you and attract a lot of people, because now we used to, because of social media, when it comes to personalities, your connection with a personality stopped the second that they stopped being on TV. Now it continues from YouTube to Twitter to Facebook to Instagram and all that kind of stuff like that. And of course, everything that they do afterwards. And that's something that is invaluable. But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I said. We're talking money, because I feel like losing Katie Nolan is going to be something that actually has like big ramifications for ESPN as a whole. And on that note, we take our last hydration break, and when we come back, ladies and gents, we're going to power through. We're going to power through a conversation about the WNBA playoffs for just a hot second. I'm going to give you a little taste of what's going on there. We're also going to talk about the drama that is the NBA, the drama that this league, drama type stuff with the NBA before the season ever even starts, the kind of stuff that's being said and being talked about as we come into the third season of the NBA under the global pandemic caused by COVID-19. And then we're going to break down every single game in the we got some stories about some stories that are going on in the NFL, but then we're also going to break down every single game for week 4 of the NFL, and I'll give you some heads up picks on the money line type stuff. We'll be right back right here on the Broke Boys Sports Podcast. I'm Ashton Gene Lewis. Let's see let's see. You know what? We're going to do Beyond the Clearing. Beyond the Clearing by Christina Gugas for the second hydration break right here on the Broke Boys Sports Podcast. Hey, what's up? We're back here live on the Broke Boys Sports Podcast. I'm Ashton Gene Lewis. Don't forget, hold on, let me see if I can do it correctly. Hey, what's up, YouTube? Don't forget to like and subscribe and make sure you smash that bell for the notification button. There we go. Hey, that's a little bit better. Start off a little bit better. We'll work on it. We're back here from the second hydration break, and from here on out, ladies and gentlemen, the long haul begins. We're going to talk about a ton of stuff going on in sports, and if you are watching either on Twitch, on YouTube, or listening live on Spreaker, perhaps, for some reason, shout out to you, first of all, if you're just listening live. I will admit you're missing out on what my lovely face looks like, but other than that, shout out to you. We, of course, as always, are taking questions in the chat in either one. Hold on, actually, I just thought about I need to pull up YouTube. There could be like 50 billion people that have been trying to chat on YouTube, and I would never know. I have a strange feeling that's not the case, as we suspected. We just started on YouTube. This is like our third simulcast on YouTube, so we're going to take a while to build up people. And sad to say, once I end this episode, I have to get back to work in terms of like cutting down clips and then uploading those to YouTube, so that'll be fun. But we are going to talk about, off the top, ladies and gents, and what's going on. As you know, a segment that is about what's going on in sports. Nothing crazy. Just literally what's popping. So, WNBA Playoffs, we're going to start off here. We're trying to summarize this real quick to make you a little bit better of a sports fan. I will tell you this. It is worth the watch. I watched the last, 3 games of the WNBA Playoffs. Fire. Especially if you're a basketball fan. Aces beat the Mercury. The Las Vegas Aces are one of the number 1 seeds out of the conference. Out of the 2 different conferences, the Aces are one number 1 seed, and the Connecticut Sun are the other one. And then the Connecticut Sun are the number 1 overall seed in the WNBA going into the playoffs. So the Aces beat the Mercury in Game 1. Asia Wilson, the reigning WNBA, well, not reigning as of yesterday, Jaquel Jones has become WNBA MVP, but she was the reigning WNBA MVP as of yesterday when I wrote this part of the show. But she rocked a Cheryl Swoops Comets jersey dress that went all the way down to like the mid-thigh area, going out there and celebrating and showing up. She also rocked a Monarchs jersey dress, which is a old school WNBA team. So paying homage to the people that paved the way for Asia Wilson, one of the best in the game, to come into existence and be able to go out there and play in America in front of her family and all that kind of stuff like that. So they beat the Mercury, the Phoenix Mercury, which if you don't know them, they are led by a combination of some of the best players on the planet. Diana Taurasi, Skylar Diggins-Smith, and Brittany Griner. All 3 of those ladies were on the women's gold medal winning team in the Olympics. And it's for good goddamn reason. Diana Taurasi still got range like nobody's business. She shoot it from the parking lot and knocked the lights out, baby. But yeah, the Mercury win Game 2 in this one, and it was because Diana Taurasi did something absolutely absurd. Brittany Griner, who is from Houston, H-Town, hold it down, the best center in the world in women's basketball, came up with 25 points, but that paled basically because the Aces were resided to throwing a double team against Brittany Griner in the paint, and Brittany Griner was able to find her open teammates, and then they were able to get the ball back to her, and she was able to score easy buckets. Also, she made a lot of contested ones too, other than the time that Liz Cambage, who is the second best center in all of women's basketball right now, was on the court. But the crazy thing that Diana Taurasi did was she knocked down 8 3-pointers out of the 11 times she attempted them. She went 8 for 11 from the 3-point line in a playoff game, 72%, and she ended up with 37 points, and they actually blew out the Aces in Game 2. So the drama continues. It's 1-1 in this series between 2 veteran-laden teams, the Phoenix Mercury and the Las Vegas Aces, who, honestly, they have some of the best young guns in the game, but they definitely, with the likes of Chelsea Gray, who's one of the best in the games at the point guard position, point god, as many people have resided to calling her, it's very impressive. I just saw a really cool story before the podcast started. Apparently, Chris Paul has bought 500 tickets for people to go to the Mercury Game 3 versus the Las Vegas Aces. Move on to the next, the other playoff series that's going on in the WNBA playoffs right now between the number 1 Connecticut Sun and the Chicago Sky, who, by the way, had to win 2 single elimination games to get to the point where they got to the semifinals to play the Sun in a 5-game series. So shout out to them for being clutch. Before we start talking about this, I want to point out like one thing, and it kind of gives you like a glimpse of what it's like to be a WNBA player. These are tall, athletic basketball players, women that are at the best of their game, women that many would argue are the best to ever play basketball. Right outside of like a few, the overall skill level of women's basketball players is increasing year by year, really because people stopped playing women. They stopped preventing women from being able to play basketball. What a concept out there, right? And a lot more people are taking notice and paying attention to women's basketball more than ever. And because there's more money being pumped into the sport, they're even having a situation where this last week the NCAA has their financial teams meeting together to figure out a way to have the Final Four for the men and the women held together, which, by the way, that's how stupid the NCAA is. They've been having the tournaments held, and they've been having the Final Four held in 2 different locations instead of having the Final Four held in one location to save on money, needing to purchase other venues, right? Or having other venues bid, or increasing the bid that other venues can give them in terms of like being able to get the money to host the games and stuff like that. Get twice as many games on the same TV networks for more money. That's how stupid oppression is, right? We love it. We love to see it. Anyway, speaking of oppression, the CBA for the WNBA, if you guys don't know, does not allow for private chartered flights for the WNBA players across the board. And so it has set up this really actually kind of pathetically sad situation for the WNBA in the year 2021. The Chicago Sky and the Connecticut Sun both of those teams are headed to Chicago, right? Because Chicago has a home game for one of the playoff matchups here. They are going to Chicago, and it will take 2 teams 6 flights to get to Chicago because they have to split the team up into 3 different groups so that the ladies for the Sun and the Sky don't have to get middle seats on commercial flights. Yeah. It sounds as dumb as it sounded when I read it in my head than when I said it out loud. But hey, that's the world we live in. Anyway, speaking of which, under those conditions, Courtney Vandersloot of the Connecticut Sun notched the 2nd triple-double in WNBA playoffs history. The only other person to do it, Cheryl Swoops. Shout out to the comments. H-Town, hold it down, baby. You know what time it is. Anyway, Courtney Vandersloot did that, and the Connecticut Sun were able to blow out the Chicago Sky in Game 1 of the series. The Sun, that was to win Game 2. The Game 1 situation, why did I say that? No, Courtney Vandersloot plays for the Chicago Sky. Why did I say it like that? That's so stupid. Courtney Vandersloot has the 2nd triple-double in WNBA history in the playoffs to beat the Connecticut Sun, and then the Sun responded because they have one of the best players in the game, and they also have the now reigning MVP, Jaquel Jones, plus Alyssa Thompson, who's one of the best in the game, combined together for a double-double. Jaquel Jones only scored 4 points in this game, but there were also 5 starters for the Connecticut Sun that came up with double-digit points, and he went out there and put the work on the Chicago Sky and blew them out in Game 2, which has forced, obviously, a Game 3 and a Game 4 coming up here because they're in a 5-game series, so first 1 to 3 wins. Other stuff to point out here, Jaquel Jones is now the WNBA MVP, and I would be remiss if I didn't point out she only got 48 of the 49 possible first-place votes. Somebody voted for Brittany Griner because guess what, guys? There always has to be one. There always has to be one person that's the natural dissenter when this whole situation is going on. And we move on. That's your update on the WNBA. I will drink the rest of this double whiskey Coke, and we'll talk about the NBA here in a second. If you got any other stuff you want to talk about in the show, hit me up in the chat. Shout out to Mel for hopping in the chat and checking out the show. Appreciate you. You're the best. Anyway. Ooh, where we at? I don't know why I just scrolled away from it. Anyway, NBA news. Ben Simmons. A lot of people have been talking about him. Ben Simmons of the Philadelphia 76ers, point guard / power forward / center / amalgamation of all positions in one person minus the good teamwork. Anyway, Ben Simmons is a Philadelphia 76er currently, He has demanded a trade. He's refused to show up for training camp, and as of today, the Sixers put in paperwork to prevent him from receiving his $8 million that he was supposed to receive today for being at camp. Which, by the way, is super rare in the NBA as a whole because basically every contract is ironclad guaranteed under certain circumstances, and obviously Ben Simmons has violated one of those circumstances by not showing up and attending team events. So they are going to make sure that he doesn't get his money, which may coax him into joining with the team because preseason trades are like super rare in the NBA, even if you are a known commodity in the game. So if he's able to figure some way out in this situation, I'd be surprised. Only time will tell. But other stuff that went on, there was a Kyle Neubeck interview with Joel Embiid, who is the actual star of the Philadelphia 76ers. They're supposed to be the combined two stars of the Sixers and be the best players in the game after losing in the Eastern Conference semifinals to a whoa, man, it seems like it was years ago. After the 76ers lost in the Eastern Conference semifinals, a lot of people have been going back and forth about like whether or not Ben Simmons even deserves to be on the 76ers. A lot of Philadelphia fans doing Philadelphia things. They're kind of assholes sometimes, especially when you're not going out there and doing what they want you to do, which basically is like you have to win every single game no matter what, or they hate you, which is a terrible place to exist, but is a very common place for most people within the realm of sports. Kyle Neubeck talked to Joel Embiid, who is the superstar for the NBA, or superstar for the Philadelphia 76ers, MVP, and all that kind of jazz like that. And this is what he had to say in a partial of a quote, talking about a grander concept about not only how the Philadelphia 76ers were built, but in particular how Ben Simmons has been treated, because Ben has made the argument that he's been treated poorly by the 76ers organization, which, by the way, I agree with Ben Simmons' desire to want to seek a trade, but I disagree with the fact that he has been mistreated by the 76ers. Our team has always been built around his needs, so it's just kind of surprising to see, even going back to the reason we signed AI, who is Al Horford, one of my favorite NBA players of all time, because he is what we call a stretch five. As a guy who played center in high school because he was massively undersized, mainly because I was really fat when I was in high school, I had to play center because I couldn't shoot. But I always wanted to be like Al Horford. He was the kind of big guy on the team. He was strong, and then on top of that, he had the ability to have range from all over the court, because that's what I kind of wanted my game to be like: the ability to beat people down underneath the basket, but also the ability to go out there and be an effective shooter. But anyway, he said the reason we signed AI, we got rid of Jimmy, which I still think was a mistake. Jimmy being Jimmy Butler, who is now with the Miami Heat, and if you ever listen to that podcast between Jimmy Butler and shout out JJ Redick, the OG who is retired, there's an episode of his podcast, The Old Man and the Three, where he talks to Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy Butler basically hints that there's one person who didn't want him on the team, and he was just like, I'm not going to say any names or anything like that. But anyway, that kind of situation broke down on the podcast, and that's what he's referencing right now. So obviously he was talking about Ben Simmons, which I still think was a mistake, just to make sure he needed the ball in his hands, because Jimmy Butler is a dominant leader. There's no question about that. That's why the Miami Heat were able to make their way to the NBA playoffs, because he was such a dominant leader. That is one thing to take out of this situation as the Ben Simmons drama unfolds. He is still a member of the Philadelphia 76ers, and basically there is relentless pressure on Joel Embiid to comment on like everything that he's doing right now, and I feel like that could, in the end, be a problem if you have to spend all your time as an NBA player having a conversation about another grown-ass man. But hey, what do I know? Only time will tell if he actually gets traded away. If you listen to the rumor mill, which of course is fueled and funded exclusively by like team executives and agents and all that kind of stuff like that, there's so many people who have to benefit from convincing people that they're a viable source on the situation to try and steer things in a certain direction. But nonetheless, we move on to a more important thing that's going on in the NBA, and it's the quote-unquote uprising of anti-vaxxers. So Kyrie Irving and Andrew Wiggins are now the face of anti-vaxxing against the COVID-19 virus, of course, but I'd be remiss if I didn't point out something that happened earlier today. It is a conversation that was had with Draymond Green during media availability yesterday. It is this kind of blown up. In the press conference, Draymond Green says he doesn't understand why Andrew Wiggins is being pressured into trying to take the vaccine, and it's his personal choice, right? it's wild how people, to me in particular, it's wild how people like kind of understand what personal freedom is, but don't understand what like societal responsibility is at the same time. It's almost like those are like, one of them is cognitive dissonance, right? Which one that is, kind of up for you to decide. By the way, that statement, that sentiment, because at one point Draymond Green does reference how I didn't ask Andrew Wiggins about if he has a polio vaccine, a disease that has been effectively eradicated because of the widespread use of vaccines to eradicate polio. Like, so close, but just not there. So close to being a smart answer, but just not even close, right? At the same time. Jonathan Isaac, of course, has become the face of anti-vaxxing as well. If you haven't seen his comments, it is the epitome of guy using general arguments that have been disproven a million times over to try and make a point and sound like he's an eloquent individual, right? Jonathan Isaac, if you don't know him, he's the guy who stood when everybody else took a knee during the national anthem for the Miami Heat. Also, to go along with it, the other person who stood, one of the other few people that stood, Leonard Myers. If you know how his situation ended up with him using a racial slur in the course of a Call of Duty Warzone matchup, which, by the way, ironically enough, the racial slur you're thinking he used, he actually didn't. He used a slur that's specific to our Jewish brothers and sisters out there, but nonetheless, kind of told on himself there a little bit when it comes to being in a position to stand up for social justice. Anyway, Jonathan Isaac has gone out of his way to try and reiterate that he knows nothing about science. If you want to listen to his press conference, go right ahead, because he uses like the textbook examples of like, I'm young, I'm in shape, I've already had COVID, so like my natural immunity is really high. That does not at any point address his ability to spread it to other people, especially doing his part to prevent people who cannot receive the vaccine from actually catching COVID-19. It is got to be tough when you're a person who stands in the face of the deaths of 4.4 million people worldwide and think that you have a legitimate leg to stand on when you oppose like science and logic, right? Anyway, luckily, I'm not one of those people. I'm one of the sheep that took the vaccine to keep my mom and my dad alive. But whatever. Like I pointed out in this situation, Draymond Green kind of chalked it up to what I feel like a lot of other people who have gotten the vaccine do it. They're just kind of like, well, I can't force them to go out there and do it. And it's like societal pressure has been utilized to do horrifying things in the world. It's also been utilized to do amazing things. And I feel like if you were going to go out there and pressure somebody, use peer pressure as a tool to help somebody understand how they're affecting society by choosing their own personal freedom, because a lot of these guys, especially Andrew Wiggins and especially Jonathan Isaac, they refer to like the side effects of the vaccine, which are infinitesimally, ridiculously small in terms of the deaths compared to the 4.4 million people that are dead from just like COVID. You can even if you take out the comorbidities, I can guarantee you right now, the less than 2,000 people who have died from medical treatment involving COVID-19, a little bit different. Anyway, stick to your horse dewormer, I guess. Whatever. Other stuff going on in the NBA. Actually, that's all I got for the NBA. Oh, I also wanted to point out one key important fact. 95% of the NBA is vaccinated. So, for whatever you have to say, this is like a pinpoint perfect example of how media will skew things out of control. And I'm not saying it's done on purpose, but when you're the person that's doing the thing that nobody else is doing, it becomes news, right? Like, that's important. It's like, oh man, this person has a differing opinion of other people. Let's find out why. Let's listen to what this person has to say. And I'm not saying that that's not important, but when your argument like doesn't really have a leg to stand on, it's kind of dangerous to go out there and platform that kind of stuff, because the people who are already skeptical, or the people who had already made up their mind, they had already made up their mind, right? The people who are kind of skeptical, it kind of makes it seem like the argument is 50-50. Like, there's a lot of people out there right now. Like, I've seen tweets where people are like, wow, man, like nobody in the NBA wants to get the vaccine. And it's like, no, 95% of the people in the NBA are vaccinated. Like, the people you're talking, even I'll tell you this much. This tweet was quote tweeted by LeBron James, and he said, I couldn't have said it better myself, in the sense of like he doesn't feel like any social responsibility to go out there and pressure people to get the vaccine. And to their point, they're healthy individuals, young people and stuff like that. But guess what? LeBron James' entire family is vaccinated. I can guarantee you right now, Draymond Green's not one of the 5% that are not vaccinated, right? Like, that's why he's having that conversation. So that's why he's at Media Day, because he is vaccinated. So it's really weird how that's become the thing. And I want to point this out, not to say I'm like against the media or anything like that, because I feel like even that spin on media has been taken out of control, because I feel like a lot of the things that people confuse for like legitimate journalism is not true. Like there's so many things that people take as legitimate journalism that is not actual journalism on a regular basis. Like if you're looking at fucking hoops hypes and you think that's real journalism, it is not, my guy. Other stuff like that. Like these aggregate sites have come out and people think that they're like actual sources of news media as opposed to reading articles. And if there was ever like a lesson to take away from this, kids, read books. Read articles, and have a healthy skepticism and understand what healthy skepticism is. Other stuff, like I just wanted to be the overall arching fact of like that whole conversation. 95% of the NBA is vaccinated. So a lot of the people you're going to be seeing that are represented in media conferences and stuff like that are fully vaccinated, talking about the rights of people who are not vaccinated to not be vaccinated. If we lived in a world that was 95% vaccinated, maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't be upset about like the 5% of people that weren't vaccinated, because it would be that 5% would be more representative of the people who can't take the vaccine. Also, whatever. Moving on to the NFL. Speaking of more COVID-19 stuff, a big story that's been going around, and I say a big story because a guy who has a Hall of Fame vote in the NFL, Armando Salgado, who has made it very, very clear where he lines up as a person in terms of his politics and everything like that. Whatever, you can do what you want to do about that kind of deal, but this is a guy who is highly conservative, is the way I'll phrase it. He's also pushed misinformation at times, but he purports himself as an intelligent man, which is of course why he took to the internet, to Twitter, to tweet out the GoFundMe account of one Roderick David. If you don't know who Roderick David is, you shouldn't. He's a former Atlanta Falcons scout who refused to take the vaccine and was subsequently fired from his job. And Armando Salgado wants you to feel bad for this guy and donate to his GoFundMe. It's really, like, once again, like I said before, he's a former Falcons scout, and he refused to receive the vaccine, and now he has a GoFundMe for his family, as if society's job is to support him where he refuses to support society. And it's just the irony of the whole situation. Other stuff in the NFL, Richard Sherman is now a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. What a turn of events that is. Remember that one time Richard Sherman had his arm or his wrist broken and he was in a sling in an NFL football game, and Tom Brady still refused to throw the ball his way. Because that's how good Richard Sherman was at covering football, playing football at the level that Tom Brady felt uncomfortable throwing at him. Tom Brady, one of the most accurate quarterbacks of all time, did not feel confident throwing the ball to Richard Sherman. Anyway, the other thing to point out here is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are up to their old schemes again. They're saying we're going to get the old band back together when they go out there and they get a shit ton of like the high quality vets. Richard Sherman, if you guys don't know, had an incident and I won't say incident. He had a legal situation over the course of the summer, because it minimizes it, makes it seem like he dinged somebody's car or something like that. He showed up to his in-laws house and was banging the door down, threatening them to open the door. Don't know what the situation was about. Doesn't look like there's been any legal charges filed or anything like that. Also seemed like Richard Sherman may have been drunk in that situation, but he went to his in-laws house. His wife actually stuck up for him in that situation, afterwards on Twitter. But yeah, there you go. That I guess we're just not going to talk about that. Maybe at some point we will, but right now does not seem to be the case. Speaking of Richard Sherman, this is a terrible segue, but the Chaos King is lending a helping hand. If you don't know, on this show, we refer to the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints, Jameis Winston, as the Chaos King, because when things are going horribly wrong, Jameis Winston is in the utmost control of the situation. Hands down, Jameis Winston is one of the biggest beneficiaries of chaos as a whole, as a football player. And if you just go watch him play football, literally any game in his career, you will understand that. He understands chaos like nobody else does. And he's actually come out on top. I would say if there's any person who's got more than a 500 record against chaos, it is Jameis Winston. That's why he's called the Chaos King. Anyway, Jameis Winston has gone out of his way to not only donate $50,000 to the United Way in Southwest Louisiana, and of course in support of New Orleans after Hurricane Ida rolled through and wiped a lot of people's houses off the face of the earth again. He's also donating 65,000 units of water, which, by the way, I don't know what like 65,000 units of water is. Is that like gallons? But he's also donating all that water to the NOLA. He's donating that water to United Way as well. But he's also set up a T-shirt fund called NOLA Strong T-shirt campaign, where if you buy a T-shirt, all of the funds get donated to the World Central Kitchen, which is going to feed children and adults who have been affected by Hurricane Ida. So if there was ever a shirt that you should buy that has NOLA Strong on it, which, by the way, I have like a unique opinion on like the whole like insert place strong next to it. Not a fan, right? Not a fan because it is a 100% ripoff of Boston Strong, right? And I'm sure there was something else that came before that said blank strong on it beforehand, but I feel like we can do better. You can come up with something more creative. But I understand in this situation, I will make an exemption. I'm going to buy one of them t-shirts. Jameis. Better hope they come in 3XL. I'm going to need it. I'll buy one of the t-shirts, and when we go to Crescent City to play in New Orleans, I'm going to wear that. I'm going to wear that shit. So shout out to Jameis Winston for going out there and doing the right thing, putting his money where his mouth is and trying to go out there and help the city, and especially picking up kind of where Drew Brees left off, because Drew Brees left for whatever you have to say about him as a person in his last year with the whole like kneeling thing, Drew Brees has left a long, long legacy in New Orleans of charity and philanthropy in terms of trying to help the city become the great city that he believes it is in his heart. And on that note, we move on to week 4 of the NFL season. Guys, if you're it, hold on, sorry. I'm gonna take this opportunity to drink some of this whiskey Coke right here. Let's check the chat. Anybody write anything? No, just people watching. Wow, shout out to you. Shout out to people just checking out right there. Shout out Mel. Shout out Kevin. Tasty, tasty, tasty whiskey. If you're out there drinking something, let me know what it is. Anyway, Wow, Dallas Skyline got the shit kicked out of him. Holy shit. Sorry, I'm on Twitter looking at something that has nothing to do with you guys. Jesus, man. If you are a fan of NBA runway type stuff, where like NBA players wear like their where NBA players like walk down a runway in the hallway and stuff like that. Don't forget, WNBA players do the same exact thing, except they do it and they look so much better. In my personal opinion, if you're a fan of ladies, they look so much better doing it. That's what I was looking at. Shout out to my Twitter for being perfectly tuned up for what I enjoy the most. Other stuff for week 4 of the NFL season, I just want to start off before we get deep dive into the NFL, before we get to the deep X's and O's and the numbers and all that kind of stuff like that. We're 2 weeks away from the bye week, folks. So for the next 2 weeks, if you don't know what that means, the first bye week coming up in the NFL season is like week 5, and it's week 6 or 7. Week 7. So we got 2 weeks until bye weeks happen, which of course will cut down the number of games that we were watching from 16 to like almost in half, or like to 12 or 10 or something like that. So it'll be like far fewer games for you to watch, and it'll make it that much more difficult for you to watch everything that goes on in the NFL season. But nonetheless, don't feel like you need to go out here and go super hard as fuck for the first 7 weeks of the season. You can do better. You can do a lot better. Thursday Night Football, I'll give you a quick review of what happened because I'm not going to give you a prediction. I actually picked the Bengals to win. I picked the Bengals to win and to cover, and I was wrong about them covering, obviously. Final score was 24-21. The Jaguars showed some kind of life in the course of this game because they decided, and I don't know how this happened, I don't know really, like elite-level coaching from Urban Meyer to figure out that he needs to give the ball to the best player on his football team, which is James Robinson, who literally had the greatest season in the history of undrafted free agent running backs in the NFL, which, by the way, a lot more running backs than you would think, especially now in the time we live in. Urban Meyer, like, very clearly didn't have faith that James Robinson was going to be able to go out there and do what he did last season. On top of that, I think a lot of people were depending on Travis Etienne to come out there and become the starting running back, and James Robinson went out there and did the damn thing. He got twice as many carries as he did in the first 2 weeks of the season in this game. So he got, he had 16 carries in the first 2 weeks of the season. He had 18 in this game on Thursday Night Football. I think they believe in him. I think they understand that finally the secret to winning in the NFL is to be the ability to run the ball when you need to run the ball. So James Robinson was able to go out there and do that thing. He got 2 touchdowns and a bunch of yards to go along with it. Easily his best game of the entire NFL season. And hopefully Urban Meyer has figured out that that's how you should operate as a person who has James Robinson on one of his fantasy teams. Anyway, also, quick PSA, I don't care about your fantasy team. Sorry. Urban Meyer clearly didn't have faith in his game, and he paid the price for it for the first 3 games of the season. And this is actually the best the Jags have looked. Of course, it is against a team that's like more on their par, on their level, right? Like the Cincinnati Bengals. If you were talking about being on the path to rebuilding, to being a threat on a consistent basis, you would say the Cincinnati Bengals are maybe 4 or 5 steps in front of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Bengals have the improving offensive line, because last year they had one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. They have the superstar quarterback and potential superstar quarterback in Joe Burrow. They have the wide receiver you can count upon, Jamar Chase. They drafted the star running back, quote unquote star running back, in Joe Mixon. They've got the D-line that's looking pretty good, led by DJ Reader out there. And then they've also drafted a couple of good linebackers to go along with it. And they've got a high-quality safety in Billy Price. They're kind of getting on the path that they need to be successful. They're not where they need to be. They beat the Steelers last week, because the Steelers, if there was ever a team on the decline, it would be the fucking Pittsburgh Steelers. But there you go. That's the first curse word of the show. Shout out to me. I'm trying to work better. I'm trying to do better about not cursing on the show. But nonetheless, this game, the Jaguars dominated the first half of this game, mainly because the Bengals didn't score in the first half. They also missed a field goal that would have given them 3 points. But yeah, it was looking pretty bleak to begin with. It was 14-0 at one point, and then the Bengals just turned it on. Jamar Chase did Jamar Chase things. Joe Burrow was able to find. It seemed like everybody was open for Joe Burrow. Joe Mixon was able to get his run game going, and then shout out to CJ Uzama, who has been in the league for, I want to say, since 2012, so a long time. He's been in the league for a long time, and he just had his best game of his entire career last night on Thursday Night Football versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Literally at every category except number of catches. So he had the most yards, most touchdowns, most yards per carry, most deepest average depth of target that he's had all season, and the only thing he didn't have was 2 more catches to have the most catches he ever had in a single game, which, hey, shout out to him. Urban Meyer had this to say after the game was over with. Urban Meyer, legitimately heartbroken, keeps talking about the good guys and the good hearts he has in the locker room. Apologizes to reporters because his head is spinning. It is week 4, guys. This is a 17-week regular season, and I guarantee you the Jaguars are not going to the playoffs. Man, he is taking every single one of these losses hard as shit. He is taking every single one of these losses like he has been shot in the chest and he is bleeding out on the ground. And he's saying his final will and testament on the phone to his wife and his children, telling them that he loves them. It has been a drama-filled season because he seems to be just completely baffled by losing football games. And I get it. When you play college and you play with an elite level team where you draft half your team goes to the NFL and all that kind of stuff like that, you lose one game and it's heartbreaking. But he's lost more games this NFL season than he has in the past 5 years coaching in the NFL or at the college level. But hey, damn. You know the benefit of being a guy like me is I was never a supreme athlete. So I've come very accustomed to losing. I still hate it, and I still work hard to not have it happen anymore. But nonetheless, I know how to lose and take something from it and become a better player from it. Urban Meyer seems like he just takes losing and it is just baffling. He's I didn't know you could score fewer points than the other team. And I don't know what happens when you do that, and he just found out this season. So yeah, Moving on, the Carolina Panthers are playing the Dallas Cowboys. This is going to be a fun matchup. It is a top tier, many would say the best defense in the NFL versus one of the top 5 offenses in the NFL in the Dallas Cowboys. The top tier defense, of course, belonging to the Carolina Panthers. Unless the Panthers defense can get some stops out there, their offense cannot go blow for blow with the Dallas Cowboys. This is not going to happen. Like going match for match and throw for throw, Sam Darnold versus Dak Prescott, who is more talented than Sam Darnold. Just facts right now as an NFL quarterback. Also has a more talented offensive team, right? That's just not going to happen. So the Panthers got to put together one of their best defensive performances of the entire season. And this is going to be a test of like if it's real or not. Also, this is going to be a big test for one Kellen Moore, who is the offensive coordinator and resident 12-year-old of the Dallas Cowboys. He loves to abandon the run. If you're a guy who owns Ezekiel Elliott in fantasy leagues or Tony Pollard in fantasy leagues or something like that, it's going to be a bad week to start him. And I know I'm not about giving fantasy advice because I'm not like a genius when it comes to like positions versus like certain matchups or whatever. But I can tell you this right now. The Panthers have the best run defense in the NFL for a reason. And honestly, like they've just been killing it. They've been doing a great job of filling run gaps. Morgan Fox has been out there dominating as the defensive end. They've done a great job. Derek Brown, who I spoke about a lot last season on this podcast, is killing it again this year in terms of like being a run stuffer. I saw him take on like a triple team, and basically they couldn't move him more than 1 yard beyond the line of scrimmage, which is crazy to think about. But they were playing the Jets, so it's kind of understandable. But yeah, this is one of those situations where Kellen Moore is going to have the option to abandon the run very quickly in it. I'm sure he is. But the question is, will he? Will he go out there and make the Dallas Cowboys a one-dimensional team? Because I feel like if he does that, it will open a window for the Panthers to go out there and be massively successful. Other than that, I feel like the Cowboys are going to go out here and dominate the Panthers. The Cowboys defense continues to turn the ball over at the same rate. They've got an interception. They've got multiple interceptions in 2 of the 3 weeks to start the season. They've gotten an interception every single week of the NFL season. And if they get one of those versus the Panthers, it's game over. I feel like that's how delicate the Panthers offense is. And I guess we'll find out. Moving on to, I picked the Cowboys, by the way. All right, we're good. We're good. I said that out loud, and it hurt my soul. It hurt my heart. It hurt my heart a lot. We're going to move on. We're going to power through. The Giants are playing the New Orleans Saints. We just talked about the Chaos King, and I think the Saints versus easy teams is nothing. There's nothing more chaotic than Jameis Winston versus teams that he should absolutely dominate because he has more talented players than at pretty much every position. I don't think there's a position that the Saints are less talented than the Giants at any point during this game. And so naturally, I'm going to pick the Saints to win. But I am fully expecting to come onto this podcast on Tuesday when I do the NFL recap of what happened in Week 4 and be completely embarrassed. I'm banking on the most likely scenario where the Saints defense completely shuts down the ability for the Giants to pass the ball, especially considering two of their starting wide receivers are out for this game. So like if there was ever a layup type situation, this would be it. And if there's not one time where Jameis is more of the Chaos King, it is a layup type situation like this. It has me very, very worried, especially considering he has 2 of his offensive linemen out. I'm still picking the Saints, but I'm very, very concerned about Jameis doing the Jameis thing. Other game going on at noon, the Washington football team at the Atlanta Falcons. Curtis Samuels is back off of injured reserve for the Washington football team, which is going to be huge for their offense, especially since it'll give Taylor Heineke another guy to be able to throw the ball to if he didn't have enough already, which is like Scary Terry, Logan Thomas, who's like one of the sneaky best tight ends in the NFL that a lot of people don't really talk about. Curtis Samuels is going to be another guy who came over from the Panthers, where Ron Rivera used to work and was a killer out there when he was with them, especially with his ability, his versatility in the backfield. Kind of played running back at certain times, played the inside slot receiver. It's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out. But there's a couple of questions that I kind of have to ask myself when I look at this matchup. Is the Washington defense completely shattered 3 weeks into the season, which a lot of people have been talking about? I've listened to podcasts where they're talking about, it was Mina Kimes' podcast. She was talking to her guest, and she was just kind of like, yeah, they look around like they don't know where they're supposed to be physically on the field when the coverage goes on, and they basically run the same thing every single play. and they're still looking around like they're confused as to how it's supposed to operate, which, hey, we've all been there. We've all had a rough day at work. I will point out they've played some very good teams to start the season, and then they played the Giants. Are they confused on the basic coverages that they have to run? Is there an opportunity for Matt Ryan to destroy the Falcons' draft positioning? Because that's none of his business, to be honest with you. That's just nothing. It has nothing to do with him. Many would say yes. I would say yes. I guess we're going to find out. My pick is definitely the Washington football team to go out here and get this win. Taylor Heinicke has been doing a pretty good job of not turning the ball over unless he's just been completely overwhelmed by the defense that he's playing, which in this situation, he should not be. Taylor Heinicke, like we mentioned a couple weeks ago, far more talented than Daniel Jones. Not to say that he's more talented than Matt Ryan, but the Washington football team across the board has shown that they are more talented than the Atlanta Falcons this season. And I'm going to bank on that. I'm also going to bank on something that many would consider a negative, but I'm going to take it as a positive. The Washington football team has the third most pressures in this season so far. They have 40 pressures on the quarterback this season. They've only got 6 sacks to show for those 40 pressures. I'm going to bank on those 40 pressures turning into a couple of sacks. I'm going to bank on that pressure ability to turn into sacks this week. And then on top of that, I'm going to bank on the pressures that don't turn into sacks to make Matt Ryan make bad decisions and kill the offense out there. Not to say Matt Ryan will turn the ball over. I'm talking about incomplete throws out of bounds, all that kind of stuff like that, and give Taylor Heinicke some time to work with. Because versus Josh Allen, he had no shot, right? They just didn't have a shot. They don't have the offensive pace to be able to keep up with the Buffalo Bills. They didn't have the defense ability to change the pace that the Buffalo Bills operate off of. And I guess they're doing pretty good since they beat the Miami Dolphins, right? Anyway, so far this season, Washington has been destroyed up front. But basically, they have a backup quarterback. They've played the Giants. They won that by a freak field goal. They lost to the Chargers, a team that we knew was better than them. And then they lost to the Bills, a team we knew was better than them. The Falcons have showed the ability to kind of defend sparingly throughout the course of the season, and they don't really have a consistent passing game to lean on. So for as much as we talk about Matt Ryan being immensely talented, we haven't seen that this season. And of course they struggled against Tampa Bay and the Philadelphia Eagles, So safe to say they're not an elite passing offense. And I think that that's going to open the window for Washington to go out there and do the damn thing. Other things to go along here, and this is a tough week for my predictions in terms of teams that I think we're going to go winless this season. The Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears. This is a noon game here. This is a tough one, right? Because all the logic points to the Lions actually being able to win this game. But there's one, I thought about it for a second, and I thought about it a little bit more because the Lions have played, the Lions just came off a week where they put pressure on Lamar Jackson, easily one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, one of the, if not the best mobile quarterback in the NFL. A lot of people would say one of the riskiest guys in the NFL in terms of big time throws, which is what PFF judges them by, and all that kind of stuff like that. But the offense has shown the ability to move the ball down the field when they're not necessarily super challenged, which they will be versus the Chicago Bears. This is the weird part about this game. I can 100% see this game coming down to one possession and coming down to one team having to score to win this game. Who's more likely to make a play, Justin Fields or Jared Goff? Kind of a toss-up right now. Based off of the offensive line protection that we saw just a week ago, I would say that the edge goes to Jared Goff, in the sense that he has offensive linemen who can actually win up-front matchups, whereas the Chicago Bears offensive line is struggling to find people who remember how to block, based off of what we saw off of the Browns game last week, right? The Lions have two running backs that they can depend upon. They got a ton of heavy pressure versus a more mobile quarterback who's far more accustomed and far more familiar with his offense last week, and they were able to force turnovers to get the game in their favor. The Bears defense could legit, like I said, make this a one-possession game. Even in a game where they got absolutely dominated, they only gave up 26 points to the Cleveland Browns, and they basically had 0 time of possession. That's how good the Bears defense is. And honestly, I don't think it can get much worse. And I say that knowing what I said the last 2 weeks, guys. Don't forget, when you think it can't get much worse, it always can. So it kind of feels like it can't get much worse, but it definitely seems like it can for the Chicago Bears. But I'm going to go with the Bears, 1, to keep my prediction alive, but the 2, to believe that they kind of bottomed out last week, because I know that they don't. I know for a fact that the Lions don't have the kind of pass rush that the Cleveland Browns don't have, that the Cleveland Browns do have. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears were able to come up with a couple of turnovers, especially considering the kind of pressure they generate on the quarterback on a regular basis. And from what we understand, the Lions' offensive line is not like super special or anything like that. And that could set the team up. And if there was one team in the NFL that would be more likely to win off of defensive touchdowns, it would be the Bears. But yeah, I'll take the Bears versus the Lions for some weird reason, out of belief of the chaos of the NFL in a situation where the Lions should 100% win. And I'll take the Lions because, quite frankly, the Bears are not haunted by an evil ghost. The Bears may be haunted by a ghost. It's not an evil one like the one that the Lions have haunting them. The Tennessee Titans are taking on the New York Jets. I'm going to take this time to take a sip. Because, quite frankly, guys, I'm not going to waste my time breaking this game down. I hate the Tennessee Titans. I really do. I think that they're sketchy in a lot of situations. I think a lot of their fans know that they're sketchy, too, defensively. They've had some great moments defensively this season. They've had some not so great moments this season defensively. But facts are facts. I'm not that stupid. I'll take the Tennessee Titans to win and win that one handily. I don't know what the line is. Hopefully it's not double digits. If it's not double digits, I would take the Tennessee Titans. Oh, man. There we go. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. That was an easy game. I like that one. Kansas City's taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. So, I'm one of those people who doesn't think that the Eagles are hot garbage based off of what we saw on Monday Night Football versus the Cowboys. I feel like the Eagles got suckered into playing the Cowboys game. I feel like the situation may have suckered the Eagles into playing the Cowboys game. And I'm not saying that that's not going to happen in this matchup versus the Kansas City Chiefs, because they could very well do the one thing that they can't afford to do. Because if you're a team that has an asset that the other team doesn't have access to, you should utilize it to your best of your abilities. Miles Sanders is like one of the best running backs in the NFL, and the Eagles just refuse to use him. The Eagles just refuse to take the pressure off Jalen Hurts and use Miles Sanders a little bit more. He had 2 carries last week versus the Cowboys, and he got 2 carries for 27 yards. There's something to be said. He also was like 3rd in the NFL in broken tackles, which is like a huge indicator of success at the run game. They have Kevin Gainwell that they can utilize as well. I really wholeheartedly want the Eagles to not fall for the same sucker play over and over again versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes has the ability to go out there and instantaneously light these dudes up if they do the same thing they did on Monday Night Football, which you don't have a reason to believe that they're going to do for any other reason. You don't have a reason to believe they're going to not do that this upcoming weekend. You have to go with the Kansas City Chiefs, who, by the way, are number 1 in yards per play surrendered after them playing the Chargers last week. And this is going to be a rough one because I want Jalen Hurts to succeed. I really believe Jalen Hurts has the ability to go out there and be successful. And I saw, and maybe I follow some of the more extreme Philadelphia fans. Let me know. On Twitter, FB_playbook, or on Instagram at TheAshtonForever. Maybe I follow more extreme Philadelphia fans, and that's the problem. But the fact of the matter is, I feel like a ton of people, piled on to Jalen Hurts. Yes, he played poorly on Monday Night Football, but the weeks before that, he played pretty well. Beating the teams you're supposed to beat are the first steps to being able to be successful in the NFL. This matchup versus the Kansas City Chiefs, I feel like this could be a close one because of the high quality defensive presence we've seen from the Eagles even this season. They're crazy. They are suffocating high quality defenses, right? And maybe when the season is all said and done, when we look back at that Dallas Philadelphia game, we'll see like, oh man, we should have known that Dallas was like a top 5 offense in the NFL or top 3 offense in the NFL, because last season before Dak got hurt, he was on pace to set like NFL records in terms of passing yards. So that's not surprising that he would pick up on the same thing, considering the kind of draft picks that they've made, plus having Amari Cooper, plus Michael Gallup in a contract year, plus having that much depth at the running back position, in being able to overcome the fact that their offensive line has been like heavily injured, and then somehow, some way, magically get a defense. So With that being said, man, I expect this game to be close. And you know what? I'm going to say it. I was originally going to pick the Kansas City Chiefs, but I'm feeling the chaos. I'm feeling the chaos on this one. I'll take the Eagles to beat the Chiefs. I take the Eagles to beat the Chiefs, man, in this matchup. And you know, I'm probably going to get embarrassed on Tuesday for, I'm probably going to have to embarrass myself on Tuesday for making this selection. But for some reason, I just can't say no to the defensive deficit between these two teams, because if like the defense of the Eagles and the offense of the Kansas City Chiefs should be able to go toe for toe. But the Eagles offense in comparison to the Kansas City defense, I think I have maybe we'll find out that I'm completely wrong about how good the Eagles are like later on this season, but I feel like Jalen Hurts is going to go out there and make this one happen, man. He's going to get a lot of credit for what the Eagles defense does. But nonetheless, we move on. Other games going on, the Browns they're at Minnesota, which, by the way, big difference. It's getting a little bit colder out there. Getting a little bit colder everywhere, really. This QB matchup is two of the biggest question marks in all of the NFL, and I thought I would just like break this down on air, like live and all that kind of stuff like that. So when I look at the Cleveland offense, I see a team that is a run-first team that has the ability to be able to pass the ball, especially with Odell Beckham Jr. back. He has 77 yards against the Chicago Bears defense, which is pretty impressive for, Odell Beckham Jr. is top tier. He's an elite level or a high-quality wide receiver. So it's not surprising he was able to get yards, but like that Baker Mayfield was able to find him and put him in a situation to be successful and get things going the right way. The Cleveland defense showed that they have the ability to create pressure, which of course is going to skew their numbers for like the next 2 months or whatever. So be ready for that. If you're a person that looks at the stats and the numbers afterwards, remember in your mind that the Cleveland Browns had like an outlier 7-sack game versus the Bears, and it will help put it in perspective a little bit better, I believe. But compare that to what the Minnesota Vikings have been able to do on offense this season. I saw them play against a Cardinals defense that honestly they kind of tore apart in multiple different on multiple occasions. A Seahawks defense they tore apart on multiple occasions, mainly because they spent so much time playing zone throughout the course of the game that Kirk Cousins was able to catch on to the rhythm of the defense and really just dice them apart. Kirk Cousins is not, and that's the problem with Kirk Cousins. Like, nobody's ever argued that he's a bad quarterback. People have argued that he's a really conservative quarterback to the point where his skills are basically diminished from the way that he plays the game. And I think versus this Cleveland team, this is going to be a loss for the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings defense, we've seen a lot of very good improvement from the secondary when they have an opportunity to do so. And then the D-line is be able to get like a decent amount of pressure and force some turnovers. I am interested to see how this shakes out. I believe this game should be in my mind, this game should be really close, but it's going to be a big test for the Minnesota Vikings linebackers because they're going to have to hunt down. They're going to have to track down two of the best running backs in the NFL, and then on top of that, the offensive line for the Browns, like one of the few least injured groups in the game so far. And on top of that, motherfuckers good. They be hitting like the worst kind of hitting. Anyway, did my phone die? My phone definitely died. Hold on, let me plug it in here. But yeah, I'll take the Browns versus the Minnesota Vikings, and the Browns getting that dub, baby. The Browns get that dub. So yeah, I'll take the Browns on that one. We move on to the Colts taking on the Miami Dolphins. This one is interesting as well. I predicted the Colts go winless this season. I have an argument for why I think the Miami Dolphins can win this one, and it is based off of the information we've learned about what the Miami Dolphins have been able to do. So we all saw the game, or what we all heard about or read about or saw or looked at the stats for what the Miami Dolphins did versus the Buffalo Bills, where they got annihilated, right? They lost that game 35-0, all that kind of stuff because the Dolphins had like multiple 3-and-outs. Jacoby Brissett went out there and threw like 40 plus, like almost 40 passes in that game. And then in the following game versus the Raiders, who got like a shit ton of pressure on Jacoby Brissett, he threw over 40 passes in that game. For some reason, the Dolphins don't believe in running the football anymore, and I have no idea why. If somebody knows something that I don't, please let me know. Hit me up on Twitter at FB_playbook and explain it to me. But nonetheless, I believe with how well they played against the Raiders, that this Miami Dolphins team is a lot better than they look because they've played the Buffalo Bills, who are a high-quality team. They played the Raiders, who are hot right now. And sometimes being hot is better than being just like an overall good team, right? Like consistently good team, because hot means that you almost have like no ceiling in terms of like what you can and can't do. And I think that's enough to beat the Colts. I'll point out a couple of things about the Colts. The Colts have shown like zero belief in their ability to run the ball, and I think if they reestablish their belief they reestablish their faith in running the ball with like Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines and stuff like that, maybe they'll have a chance in this one. And Carson Wentz literally is getting all of the work. Carson Wentz is being forced to go out there and make plays like he's never made plays before. They do not have Quentin Nelson, and Carson Wentz has played like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL if you look at him statistically. And I know he's played a lot of high-quality teams throughout the course of this season. He just came off a game where he played against the Tennessee Titans. They had 3 turnovers, and they got 13 points out of those 3 turnovers and lost the game. Right? They got all their points off of the drives that they got from the turnovers. So they need extra possessions to go out there and win. That game should be close, but I think it should go to the Miami Dolphins when it's all said and done, especially if they can generate enough pressure, which if with Quentin Nelson out and how bad the Colts offensive line has looked this entire season, it could be a bad time for Carson Wentz in this matchup. Other stuff going on. The Houston Texans are playing the Buffalo Bills. I'll take this time, take a drink. Here we go. So here's a breakdown for this one. As you guys know, I'm a Texans fan. They're my 3rd favorite team, right? I'm a Texans fan in this one. They're probably going to get shellacked by the Buffalo Bills because the Buffalo Bills are more talented than them in a lot of positions. There's also been a recent discovery, not recent discovery, but there are 2 players who are out due to COVID, and they're not going to be able to make it back in enough time because of how the rules work or whatever. They got put on the COVID-19 replacement list. COVID-19 reserve list yesterday. So Thursday, there's no way they're going to make it back in enough time to make 2 negative tests within 48 hours before the game. So they're going to be without 2 of their best defensive players. Davis Mills is going to be starting. Nico Hollins is still out. And we'll find out. But this should be a shellacking. Like all the injuries that have piled up for the Texans, I will point out of all the rookie quarterbacks in the NFL, Davis Mills has the highest QBR. If that means anyone to anything, or, because at the same time, it's a results-based league. It's a results-based league, folks. Wins and losses. Wins and losses are the only thing that matter. Arizona Cardinals take on the LA Rams. I've spent a lot of time listening to people who know a lot more about football than me in terms of their opinions on how this is going to go. A lot of people have been caught up in terms of like the amount of chaos that Kyler Murray creates at the quarterback position, and that is something that has worried them. I am not worried about it. I know the Rams are going to beat the Cardinals. The Rams are a better team damn near at every single position except wide receiver versus the Cardinals. Plus, the Rams get some of the best pressure in the NFL. Plus, the Cardinals are facing the first team in all the 4 weeks that they've been able to play that can keep the same offensive pace as them. We saw what the Rams did last week to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that struggles to defend in terms of the secondary overall and really had injuries at the defensive line position as well. But this one is free. I think the Rams are going to go out here and dominate the Cardinals. And this is a divisional matchup, so that like the whole dominating the Cardinals thing should not happen. I think the Rams are significantly better than what the Cardinals are packing on a regular basis. And we'll see why. Like I feel like the Cardinals, like I said before, have been eating the trash. And they've had a lot of really sketchy close games. Like they just came off a game where they barely beat the They beat the Jaguars, but not by as much as you would imagine an NFL team with the quote-unquote caliber of talent the Cardinals should, right? They have a really talented young man in Kyler Murray at one of the most pivotal positions in the NFL. They have one of the best wide receivers in the game. What they do not have is one of the best defenses to stop a killer offense like what the Rams are packing here, man. So I'm banking on the Rams to go out here and dominate the Cardinals. Anyway, Seattle Seahawks versus the 49ers. This one's going to hurt, but I'm going to let the homer, the homer, when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks. Anyway, I believe the Seattle Seahawks are going to be able to go out here and be successful against the 49ers. Overall, I'm banking on Russell Wilson to be able to make some magic happen because we saw the San Francisco 49ers took some steps forward. Like, we saw them take steps forward. I'll be interested to see how the run fits work in this game because they have the ability to stop the run, which, of course, is something that the Packers struggled with last week, right? if they can stop the run, they have a much higher chance of being successful against the 49ers, especially considering these two coaches know each other very, very well. And it could come down to like how talented the two teams are. I think the Seattle Seahawks can depend upon Russell Wilson to go out there and make some magic happen. And I'm banking on that. I'm willing to bank on the more talented quarterback to win, especially considering like the matchups across the board, like offense to defense, is a lot closer than a lot of people are suspecting. Offensive line play, I don't think the offensive line play is going to match up at all across the D-line for the San Francisco 49ers. But if the and this is going to be a good test too, is the San Francisco is the San Francisco, not even San Francisco offensive line, is the Seattle Seahawks defensive line actually generating pressure? Once again, another big test. Like last week, they did really well. This week, they're playing against the best offensive lineman in the NFL, and Trent Williams, by the metrics that PFF judges that by. And if you tell me that Trent Williams is the best offensive lineman in the NFL, I believe you, because I watched Trent Williams play football and honestly could never imagine me being even anywhere near close to his level, right? And not that means anything or anything like that, but he is consistently one of the best in the game, and it seems like he's on a whole nother level this season. So I guess we're going to find out, because we saw the Packers down Zadarius Smith, who, by the way, has now had back surgery. So he went from like the 3-week IR to possibly missing out for the rest of the season with the kind of injury that he has. We're going to find out. We're going to find out if the Seahawks defense can not only figure out what's happening, figure out what's woeing them like defensively in terms of defending the pass, but if they can figure out a way to generate pressure against one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. I'll bank on the Seattle Seahawks, because if this game comes down to being close, I'll take Russell Wilson over Jimmy Garoppolo any day. The Pittsburgh Steelers are playing the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to take a sip out of my cup right here. I'll take the far superior Green Bay Packers. This is going to be one of the best offenses versus one of the best defenses. But guess what? The offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers is so bad that it's going to buy time for the Packers to go out there and be successful. This could be the death nail, right? In Ben Roethlisberger. This could be a situation where Ben Roethlisberger gets pulled in this game for somebody else to come in. Whether it be your boy Dwayne Haskins or Mason Rudolph, who knows? But yeah, I guess only time will tell. That's going to be a midday game, so that means that everybody's going to see it, because it's probably the no, it can't be. It can't be the Fox game because of the Steelers, right? Fox game of the week here in Texas is usually the Packers or the Cowboys, so this could be the mid-game. This could be the mid-game game of the week. The Ravens at the Broncos. This one should be a good one. This is the first real test of the Denver Broncos, and they'll be taking on the Baltimore Ravens, a team that has a lot of chaos and a lot of playmaking ability across the board. Rashad Bateman is supposedly coming back in this game. We'll see what happens. But nonetheless, the Denver Broncos with Teddy Two Gloves, even if they go out here and win, this is the best part about being the Broncos. Even if they go lose this game, I don't think anybody's going to go out here and question their defensive ability. But I do believe in Teddy Two Gloves. This is a tough move for a lot of black people out there. It's Lamar Jackson, the inspirational black man who is being himself in the NFL, versus Teddy Bridgewater, who's doing the same thing. Teddy Bridgewater is just going out there and doing his thing. I will take the Broncos in the win because I like to pick on the side of defense for the most part. And on top of that, if we see anything like we saw the Ravens play versus the Lions, Jesus, man. The Ravens may finish in last place in the AFC North, and that's like behind the Steelers, who are pretty bad. But yeah, I'll take the Broncos not only for the upset, but on top of that, I believe in their defense a little bit more than I believe in the Ravens as a whole. We'll see. We'll see how that shakes out, baby. Maybe Justin Tucker will set the NFL field goal record again. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football. Tell me if you've heard people talk about this one yet. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New England Patriots are playing each other on Sunday Night Football, and nobody, is really concerned about what's going to happen in this game. I will point out that me personally, I am on the side of the Buccaneers to go out here and get this dub because I err on the side of common sense. I will say this as well. Apparently, Bill Belichick says that Tom Brady and the Buccaneers are running the same exact offense they ran in New England, which not outside the realm of possibility. Show me you know that, Bill. Show me you know that, Bill Belichick. We'll see. I think that the amount of talent that we're seeing, by the way, saw Stephon Gilmore post a very cryptic Instagram post today. Apparently he's been training on his own, all that kind of stuff like that, because he's coming off of IR. I think it was like a leg injury or Achilles or something like that. But yeah, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, New England Patriots, you know what time it is, baby. It's time for the drama. That's what they're bringing. The drama is being brought. I'll take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because not only do I believe in Bruce Arians as a head coach, but I believe in the team that has significantly more talent than the opponent. Significantly more talent. Remember, it came down to the last drive of the game versus the Miami Dolphins to win that game. Although I will say Brian Flores does know Bill Belichick pretty well. So I guess we'll find out. I guess we'll find out who's going to go out here and win the game. Who's going to go out here and tear it up, right? So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the New England Patriots. Put me down for the Buccaneers for the win. I'll take Sunday Night Football with an easy pick, all right? Monday Night Football. A little bit of the drama, ladies and gents. This is the last one of the show. This is a good one to end off on. The Raiders are taking on the Chargers. The veteran quarterback in Derek Carr taking on the young upstart in Justin Herbert, combined with the fact that the Raiders are red hot yet again. And if you remember the last time the Chargers and the Raiders played each other, it came down to Justin Herbert diving into the end zone on a QB sneak. So to say that they can't compete with each other, just not true. Just disingenuous. This Raiders team, the reason that they've been so successful the past couple of weeks is because they've been able to generate pressure a lot better than any other team in the NFL. But for some reason, Justin Herbert seems to be more confident than he was a season ago. And that's scary to think about for a guy who's got the kind of offensive talent that he does. If Derwin James plays in this game, give me the Chargers. Actually, just give me the Chargers in general. I think this will be the Raiders' first loss of the season. I can't wait to see how this one shakes out, though. Like, straight up, though. I like how the Raiders are playing football here. They found a way to get Derek Carr to throw the ball down the field. Like, Henry Ruggs is so good at football that he's given Derek Carr confidence that he can throw the ball past 20 yards. I like it. I like it a lot. A lot of amazing photos came out of that game as well. If you saw my Monday Moments Instagram story feed from last Monday. If you don't know what I do on every single Monday or every single Monday kind of going into Tuesday, I post the best photos of the NFL on my Instagram story because I have a burner account where I follow all the NFL photographers and all the NFL Twitter accounts that post photos and all that kind of stuff like that. So I try and post and find the best stories, and then I posted a TikTok of what I call my image of the week for that week in the NFL. So check me out on TikTok at TheAshtonForever. Follow me on Instagram at TheAshtonForever as well. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, I have a lot more faith. Once again, I talked about how I feel like the Chargers are more talented than what the Kansas City Chiefs are packing last week. I feel like the Chargers are more talented than what the Raiders have by a lot. But I am very impressed with the improvement that we've seen so far. Damon Arnett has looked a lot better. You're seeing Casey Hayward kind of have a revitalization of his career because he played with the Chargers. Oh, sorry, almost knocked off my whiskey there for a second. But he's having a revitalization versus playing for the Raiders. And he'll have a chance to play against his old team, the Chargers. That'll be a lot of interesting stuff to see when it all pans out, right? Like, if it all pieces together, I'll be interested to see how the Raiders shake out when this is all said and done because what they're doing right now seems unsustainable. And there's only one way to find that out, and that's to play more games. I feel like the Chargers are a better team, and they've been executing at a higher level. We've seen them win close games. We've seen them go out there and play at a clutch level against a guy like Patrick Mahomes, who, by the way, for as much as you want to say about his team fading, which is something that I believe is happening, right? Like the amount of money that it takes for Patrick Mahomes to be on the team is severely hampered the ability to go out there and get high-level defensive players. And also the money that they have for high-level defensive players has been put towards guys like Frank Clark, who is not really panning out like a lot of people want him to. And I feel like we're seeing with the Chargers, they're drafting all of their best players, right? Like Derwin James, draft pick. Rashawn Slater, Kenneth Murray, Austin Eckler, draft pick, Justin Herbert, draft pick, all that kind of stuff like that. So they're hitting on all cylinders, and they've got a guy like Brandon Staley whose defensive mind can definitely diffuse whatever the Raiders have going on. I put more faith in the Chargers on that one, and I'll call that one a win. We'll finish up the show almost 2 hours, ladies and gentlemen. It feels like we're back in the old school days. If you listened all the way to the end, I appreciate you very much. Hugs and kisses and all that kind of stuff like that. I'm kidding. Hit me up. I do love you, though. I do love you. Don't forget that part. Regardless of the hugs and kisses, I do love you. Shout out to anybody who hopped in and out of the chat while we were going on. I am calling it a night, and so should you. I have to go to work at 11:30 in the morning, but I also have to finish these double whiskey cokes. Like, that's the rules. I don't make them. I just follow them. We are out of here. Wash your hands. Wash your ass. If you have the ability to wash your whole body, please do it. COVID out here in the streets doing its thing. Eat your vegetables and go home, Roger. Oh, snap. Later, Kevin. Thanks for tuning in, man. I appreciate you every single week you do. I promise you I'll get you some more people to talk to. Shout out to Mel for hopping in there for a second. I appreciate that. I know she doesn't really like sports like that, but hey, Kevin, I call that good recruitment, right? So we'll see what happens. If we get Mel, that'd be a huge, huge pull for our team. Also, we're up to, I think it's like 7 ladies that are going to play for us. It's going to be lit. It's going to be lit. If you don't know, I play Quidditch, and I think I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't feel like explaining it again. I'm kidding. I play Quidditch, and I try and recruit people and stuff like that. I'm going to hop on my boy Playtow's live for his Twitch, because he's been busy. He's been doing his thing, man. He took a little while off, and he's been doing a lot. But if you're a Quidditch player, it's Riley. So go give him some love. He supported me when I was first starting out on Twitch, but his Twitch account is PLAETOE Plato. Playtow, I guess is how he pronounces it. But go follow him there. Give him some support and give him some love. He held it down. He's cool peeps, even before we started doing the Twitch thing. And now he's back. I know he had like some mental health stuff he was working on, and he's been battling through it. Appreciate my boy. I'm out on the Twitch stream. As soon as